Hey, what up, everybody? Hey, I'm gonna do a little review on Ocean Keltoi's video. Babies are atheists is a bad meme. All the things Ocean Keltoi got wrong in his video. Now, I have to tell you, if I actually did that, we wouldn't be here very long. Matter of fact, it would be a very short video, and I'd probably be ending it right about now. Because honestly, I didn't find anything wrong with his video. Quite the opposite. I thought Ocean actually nailed it. He was succinct. He got everything down that most people would probably take 2 hours to do in with about 10 minutes, which I thought was pretty impressive. He nailed all the points. But I thought there's some things that he said that could have been sussed out a little bit more. Obviously, he was going for brevity, and he just wanted to get the main points out there, and I totally get that. So on that job, I think he did fabulous. I don't think he got anything wrong. So yeah, this is a little clickbait only because I wanted to give him a little jab because he didn't really give me any nod for that video. Even though a lot of this argumentation, whether babies are atheists or not, I've talked about for a very long time. Matter of fact, he had mentioned Bionic Dance, who I guess people would probably say is a intellectual nemesis of mine, so to speak. I don't find her to be convincing on anything. I think her arguments are horrible, and I think she's probably the creationist version of atheism when it comes to some of these philosophical arguments. So, not a fan of Bionic Dance, to say the least. But he is right that Bionic Dance was one of the people that promoted this narrative years ago. And I was around back then, about 4 or 5 years ago, probably. Or at least when I started to come around, or at least started watching some of these videos. And she was on a place called The Place. There's Dr. Jones and Pastor Bob and Ozzy Ramses II and a few other people. And this topic actually came up, the definition of atheism, and of course, babies being atheists or not, based upon what Ocean actually said. In the what's called sensu lato, which is the broad definition of the word that is used descriptively. Then anything that's not a theist would be considered an atheist under that terminology. By the way, we'll get to some live chat here, but I kind of want to get all this preliminary stuff out first. So he made a very good point on that is a descriptive definition. That's not prescriptive. In other words, it doesn't tell you how to use the word. It doesn't say this is how you have to use the word. The only time I definitely find prescriptive definitions is mostly in mathematics, right? You'll find things are defined to be a certain way with mathematics by definition because mathematics is a lot more rigorous. But under Bionic Dance's understanding of these terminological approaches to philosophy, where you sola dictora, as Ocean mentioned, she would be right. Her logic is correct on that. Is that if you hold to such a dichotomy that anything that is not a theist is an atheist, or anything that doesn't have a God belief that's an atheist, yeah, then my computer, my table, my lamp, my chair, all atheist. Now, what I want to kind of dive in on that, though, is what's the use of that? Now, most people have recognized by now, over several years, that people have realized that is not the only definition. Matter of fact, that's not the even most common definition, especially in philosophy. In philosophical terminology, the belief that God does not exist is considered to be normative. So if you ever go read a paper, ever go read something in the journals, the belief that God does not exist is ostensibly going to be what you're going to find. That's ubiquitous throughout philosophy. Now, there's different ways they can approach that, different ways they can say it. They can say the proposition of theism is false. They can say the negation of the proposition of theism. They can say the metaphysical claim that gods do not exist. That's also found. That's in Stanford, actually. So when people say atheism is not a claim, well, yes, it is. I mean, if you go to Stanford, it clearly says atheism is the metaphysical claim. It's the word they use, that God does not exist. But I think what Ocean started to talk about, but didn't have much time to go into detail, was the usefulness of such a declaration of saying that babies are atheist. He made a point of saying, I'm not sitting on my atheist, writing on my atheist, making a video on my atheist, to talk about babies being atheist. And by the way, people like Ocean and other people like making standalone videos, and I get that, and I'm glad that they do. I generally don't make standalone videos. I probably should, but I like them more going live and just talking. A lot of people don't like to be able to do that because it's on the fly. It's a lot more difficult. You can't go back and edit, make a lot of errors in your speech, and you got to think a lot quicker. But it's just a format that I'm used to, and so that's what I kind of do when I do these analysis on such like these videos. I could do a video about that video, but I got to tell you, it'd probably get less views and probably wouldn't be as entertaining. So this is why I just kind of do a coffee reading kind of thing. By the way, got my smug. Look at that. So what's the point of having atheists wanted to put in the same group of inanimate objects? This kind of reminds me of Tom Jump's moral theory. Tom Jump and Alex Mappass recently discussed this, and he also had a debate with Darn's Deity where it came up again. But Tom Jump argues that inanimate objects have moral consideration. So the way he defines a moral framework would be what he calls involuntary imposition of will, which is just another way of saying against somebody's desires. So if something is undesirable, if it goes against your desires, according to him, under his moral ontology, it is immoral or morally impermissible. Now, nobody thinks that way. I mean, that's just the most one of the ridiculous arguments I've ever heard in my entire life. But it's very similar to babies being atheist. That when you start dealing with inanimate objects, right? When we talk about morality, the reason why we have morality is we're actually agents of moral consideration. This is another thing that I disagreed with Bionic Dance on once. She was arguing that in a game, in literally a video game, you have moral consideration. So if you shoot an NPC, there's some ethical concerns there. I completely disagree with that. That is an inert environment. Just like your dreams are inert, morally inert environments. You have no moral consideration to any dream character or anything in any video game. That's not how we utilize the terms as far as morality. If you were to water it down where you T Jump does to say, well, I don't want a rock to fall on my head, but if a rock falls on my head, that's an immoral act. There's no useful reason to have such a moral ontology like that. We don't assign morals to inanimate objects like rocks, and he did it to time. It was just completely nonsensical. And I think that this is a very similar situation when Bionic Dance tries for years to run the argument that babies are atheists. Because again, as Ocean pointed out, it would make rocks atheist. It would make tables atheist. It would make anything that's not a theist an atheist. And yeah, you can limit your set to a person, and he pointed that out. But that's not Bionic Dance's argument. She is using it by the strict what would be a complement set. That you have a set and then you have the complement set. So anything that's not in this set it must be in this set. And so you have a universal set of all things, and in that universal set of all things, you have this set, and anything that's not in this set is in this set. And one element cannot be in both, and every element has to be in one or the other. They're called mutually exclusive and jointly exhaustive. So in that case, she's actually correct. So when she says, well, I'm correct on this, and Steve tells me I'm not, that's not what I'm arguing with her on. In that dichotomy, in that schema that she uses, she would be correct. But the problem is that nobody uses that schema as in philosophy. Nobody in philosophy would ever think that way, because there's no reason to think that we would use inanimate objects as morals, agents of moral consideration, or thinking agents. Ocean pointed out two things: to be aware of the proposition and have the cognitive executive functions to evaluate the proposition. Babies don't do that. Rocks don't do that. So why would we want to put atheists who want to have a respectable position in the same category of a rock? Because as he points out, when you do like a poll and you say, hey, how many atheists are in the room? You don't count every cork. You don't count every table. You don't count every lamp. That's not how. It's not how you would use these terms. And this goes into speech act theory, and this goes into how we communicate. So there's something called a constative. And what a constative is basically my positions on how something is, the state of affairs of the universe. So when I say something, that is my belief that this is the way it is. So if I say I believe gods do not exist, I'm making a statement about reality. I'm actually saying that it is my belief, that it is the position that I hold, that the proposition that God does not exist. Now, that isn't my actual position, but that's what is normative in atheism. Now, babies can't do that, right? Babies have never been aware of the proposition. They cannot evaluate it. So they're lacking some major components of what we would construe to be effective communication. If I asked Ocean, hey, what's your position? And he tells me, well, I'm a polytheist, I know what he believes in. I know he believes there are multiple gods. No questions are needed to even suss out anything more. But on the lack of belief definition, right? I don't believe. There's a lot of ambiguity there because, as Ocean pointed out, there's different things that could be construed as lack of belief. Agnostic lack of belief, atheist lack of belief, theological non-cognitivist lack of belief. None of those are atheist. Now, people can say, well, under that schema, they would be atheist. Okay, sure. But again, you've lost all granularity. You've lost all sense of how we want to communicate ideas with each other and be effective in our communication. Because if I said, Ocean, hey, I'm sitting on my atheist right now, what is that going to mean, right? It's going to be a very odd way of communicating things to him. And I think that's important because there's no intelligibility there to be had. So people ask, well, Steve, why do you harp on this? And and Ocean makes the best point on that is because when you're dealing with these topics, there's a normative way of understanding things, and then there's this lackadaisical, descriptive, sola dictura way of looking at things. And it's a very weak-minded way of doing things. The way I look at it is if it's very similar, like theists have easy believism, while atheists have easy lack of believism. I don't see much of a difference. It's a very easy way to say, look, I'm just not accepting your proposition. I think that, I'm not going to evaluate it. I'm just going to say that you're not correct, or I don't believe you. And so it kind of distances themselves from the actual conversation. There's a disconnect there because they're not evolving. So they're not involving themselves in the conversation at that point. They're just basically sitting back going, I don't have anything to add to this. I have no burden. I have nothing to say on this. I have nothing to add on this. And so they don't do themselves any favor when they don't take a burden of proof and they don't take a more hardline approach if that's their belief. And the reason I say that is because when I talk to a lot of atheists, and I talk to a lot, people say, well, how many atheists use the same uses as you do? Quite a bit. And they all will be happy to say, I don't believe in God, but I also don't believe in God because I believe gods don't exist. And they'll go into great detail as to why. And they can justify it. They'll say, these are the reasons why I think gods don't exist. They can say, well, you can have an aggregate argument that if you add up things like the logical problem evil, the evidential problem evil, divine hiddenness, moral epistemological arguments against God, then it's probably the likelihood of God existing is pretty low. That's their justification. Boom, they're done. That's all they got to do to a theist. So at that point, a theist cannot say, well, you've avoided your burden of proof, because no, they've given it. They've given their burden of proof and they met their justification. Because the burden of proof does not require proof. It does not require evidence. It does not require, well, I should say it does require evidence if you consider to be reasons evidential. It doesn't require physical evidence. If somebody says, well, how can you say gods don't exist without proving gods don't exist? Because that's not the claim. The claim is that you're holding a position to be the case, ontologically speaking, that it is the case that gods exist or it is not the case that gods exist. But that is not a certainty claim, and it's not even a knowledge claim. It's a position of your belief on that ontology. It could be wrong. And when people make this weird thing that you have to prove something, that's not what the burden of proof is. And the only time you have to prove something would be if I say, hey, I can prove this. Okay, then you have a burden. Then you have an onus. If you want to maintain rationality and you want to, again, I assume principle of rationality that when we have these discussions, people want to be rational agents. There's a compact there that we're going to be honest with each other. And if not, then it's very difficult to have honest, effective communication. If everybody lied, how difficult would it be in society, right? You couldn't have effective discourse because you never know what somebody's actually thinking, right? If I said, hey, what time do you want to meet me someone? They say 4 o'clock. I'm like, well, they're lying, so I have no idea what they want me time to meet them. I wouldn't know. I mean, you could argue, well, if everybody lies, then you just figured out that they're telling the truth. If they say no, they're lying. That means yes. Well, that's fine for that, but that doesn't work in all cases. Like, again, hey, Ocean, what time do you want me for lunch? He says 5 o'clock. I'm like, he's lying. Okay, so it doesn't tell me anything. So there's reasons why we have these social norms and why have these communications with each other. And just by saying you lack a belief doesn't inform anybody of anything. It just says you're not a theist, right? Because you can logically deduce this. Let's look at the actual strict dichotomy: theist or not theist, right? That's it. Those are actual. Such are the case where they're jointly exhaustive and mutually exclusive. You have to be either one or the other. You're a theist or you're not a theist, right? God exists or God does not exist. But your beliefs are not dichotomous like that. I can believe that God exists. I can believe that God does not exist. I can believe I have no position on the topic. I believe that the whole thing is meaningless. I have a lot of different beliefs I can have with respect to that proposition. Those are more along the lines of what's called a second order burden of proof or second order justification. So when somebody says like the word agnosticism, right? There's a lot of misconceptions about that because you go to a dictionary, which is descriptive. Again, Ocean pointed that out very clearly. These things are how words are generally utilized based upon usage. They're called synchronic usage, meaning uses of the modern time, as opposed to diachronic, which would be over history. So the dictionary is generally going to give you how words are kind of used. And by the way, the lack of belief dictionaries, those are modern. Those have been changed because there have been active engagements with atheists to go out and have those things changed. Merriam-Webster was one of them, and I believe Oxford, one of Oxford's versions, were changed because of that. But if you go to many of the other ones, you go to Merriam-Webster's Learner, if you go to Collins, if you go to Merriam-Webster's Learner, they all use the actual philosophical definition that God does not exist, the belief that God doesn't exist. And so just by pulling up a dictionary, it doesn't tell you anything. These are just descriptive things. You want to go to a more in field or in a domain of discourse encyclopedia of some sorts, like Stanford, Internet Encyclopedia, something along those lines of a journal type thing. And so when you use the term agnostic, people think, well, look at this. The dictionary says it deals with knowledge. Well, yes, in a broad version, but you don't see that word usage used in the literature very often. Matter of fact, pretty much nil. It's not used that way. It's not used as Huxley used it, which was called a epistemic normative principle. And what he meant by that was basically very similar to a precursor to the scientific method. He felt that you should never accept anything without evidence to do so. And it was more of a methodological approach, kind of similar to logical positivism, that if you had to be able to show something to be the true or false as far as a proposition. But the knowledge thing, when people say agnosticism is knowledge, they're talking about what's called an epistemological proposition, the knowability of gods. So if I say I know God does not exist, I'm making a claim about the universe. I'm making a claim that God does not exist. Right? I'm saying that I know that. I meet the conditions for knowledge. And there's many different theories of knowledge out there. There's the most common, I'll tell you, the most common is what's called justified true belief. But there's many others. There's Karski's semantic theories, and there's justified true belief plus. But the real simple one that most people generally use, but you don't have to, is this: you believe the proposition to be true, the proposition is true, and that you're justified to believe. Pretty simple. So in that case, you have to believe in order to have knowledge. So when I say I know P to be the case, I know P is true, I am actually saying that I believe P is true as well, under that schema, under that theory of knowledge. So when we're talking about babies not having a lack of belief, it's not in any theory of knowledge where you would have a case where lack of belief means anything to anything. It's not informative. So this agnostic position, when people say, well, babies are agnostic, well, no, they're not agnostic either, because agnosticism requires suspension of judgment. It requires knowledge of the proposition, right? I have to be informed of the proposition. I have to be exposed to the proposition in order to be able to evaluate it. If I can't come to a conclusion, I can suspend judgment on it. Again, Ocean mentions this in his video, that exposure. And he put up something on the screen, which was a citation that I use often, that I made. It was from Graham Oppy on his book, Atheism and Agnosticism, Principles of Religion, I believe is the subtitle. And he points out that atheists believe that God does not exist. Agnostics suspend judgment on it. And if you don't know about the proposition, you have no knowledge of the proposition, you are called innocent. That's what he calls it. And I think that's a fine term. So babies would be called innocent of the proposition. Now, some people have balked at that, and they said, well, you're using religious terminology here. You're saying they're innocent. That's not how it's being used in that context, though. Again, many words are polysemous. So when I use the term innocent, that babies are innocent, I'm not talking about sin. I'm not talking about with respect to any religiosity. I'm talking about they're innocent in the fact that they have not been exposed to that proposition. They have no way to have evaluated it yet, to even suspend judgment on it, or to be cognitively aware enough to make a decision or informed decision, whether they believe or don't believe. And so I agree with Ocean wholeheartedly on this. And I know him and I've talked about this. I know that there's a lot of atheists out there that have just for some reason dogmatically latched on to this notion that atheists are, that inanimate objects are atheists. And my question to them is this: what pragmatic usage does that have? Again, going back to how we communicate with each other, we don't pragmatically go around saying things like, "Hey, I need to go and I need to take my atheist to the store today. I need to drive my atheist to the store today." I don't put all those things in that group. And again, Ocean made the distinction between cars and trucks, right? Yeah, I'll by a descriptive definition, all trucks are cars, right? But are they really? Well, no, because we understand in language there's more to be communicated. There's a elocution aspect when we say something. And when I say, "Hey, I have a truck," I got a truck, right? But if I say I have a car, most people are not going to think of a Ford F-150. They're going to think of a car, even though they're both four wheels, and they both meet the definition descriptively given in a general dictionary. This is why it's so critical that we have these distinctions, because there's granularity to be had there. When people say they lack a belief, they're not telling you anything about their actual position. They're not telling you if you're a car or a truck. You don't know. You just know you have four wheels in that case. Right? They're not telling you anything about their actual belief. And so I would ask the atheist out there that want to run this narrative that babies are atheist and inanimate objects are atheist, to what advantage does that have? Because the only things I've ever heard them say is, well, it takes away from the theist, it puts the burden of proof on the theist. Well, that's a dishonest approach. Because if you're in a dialogue with somebody, both of you have a burden of proof. It doesn't matter what the topic is. There are some exceptions when you're defending like a PhD, and there's some when you're different types of argumentation theory. But in a general dialogue, two people having a disagreement have a burden of proof, each one. But that just means you have to give arguments of why you believe a certain way if you want to be rational. If you don't want to be rational, then you don't. I can say, "Hey, I believe Santa Claus exists." And if Ocean asks me, "Well, hey, Steve, why do you believe Santa Claus exists?" And I say, "Oh, I don't have no reason." I'm irrational at that point. Right? So if people agree with that, and I think they kind of would, hopefully. If I said, "Hey," if Ocean asked me, "Hey, Steve, do you believe in Santa Claus?" And say, "I believe Santa Claus doesn't exist." And he asked me, "Well, why?" And I say, "I have no reason. I'm just as irrational." Right? If I don't give reasons why I have a belief either way, that's on pains of irrationality. And I think, again, most people would understand that. Where they seem to balk at is when you say, "I don't believe." But let's look at that. If I say I don't believe Santa exists, I too have a burden of proof to substantiate why I've abstained from affirming or denying the proposition. Because if I said I don't believe Ocean exists, most people would go like, "Hey, Steve, why don't you believe Ocean exists? I've talked to him, I've seen him, I've hung out with him." And I'd be like, "Yeah, whatever, I don't believe that he exists." That's a pretty irrational position if I can't justify it. So if that would be the case for Ocean, why is it any different for a God? If you don't believe God exists, it's the same kind of position. You need to be able to explain why you don't hold a belief. And agnostics don't hold a belief. Agnostics require a burden of proof. That's very simple. Agnostic says, "I don't have no belief either way. I don't believe the proposition is true. I don't believe the proposition is false." Okay, why do you have that position? That's a fair question. But if you accept that agnostics have a burden of proof, then you accept that these theists, the lack of belief people like Bionic Dance, who says, babies have, are atheist, they too would have a burden of proof then in that case, unless you say that they're innocents, because innocent do not have a burden of proof. Why? Because of what Ocean said. They have not been exposed to the proposition. Therefore, they do not have a burden of proof. But if you have been exposed and you have been able to evaluate it, then you have the burden of proof, right? So I just wanted to give a quick synopsis on that. I think I kind of hit all the points I wanted to talk about. Again, I thought Ocean's video was really good. And I'm not going to change the title because it's totally clicky. And I don't, you know what, I'm allowed to every so often, a little clickbait. Got you watching, right? But I know we got a lot of people in the audience here. So let me see if we can take some questions here. And I saw Ocean out there too. He can come in, by the way, if you want, so anybody can. So Digital Davros says a baby has intuition, a cognitive function. There is no reason for a baby to hold a belief. Well, see, I think babies hold beliefs per se, right? I think that a baby goes to suckle, it believes it's going to get milk. It's going to get some, it may not be an active belief. It's not going to be like in the belief that we understand it. But there's something called infant, I think it's called infant cognitive theory. and it's a meta approach to cognitive beliefs. So it's not an active, what we would consider to be a belief on a proposition, right? It's a psychological state. And that's a big distinction because atheism and theism are not construed to be psychological states, right? The reason for that is because you cannot test psychological states. So if a theist says God exists, there's no way to test for that if that's just their psychological state. Sure, you can test it, see if they have that some kind of psychological state, but that's not really what people are asking for. When a theist says God exists, that is making a statement toward a proposition that ontologically God exists. That can be tested, right? We can test propositions. But the agnostic says, I don't believe either way. That's not a testable proposition. That's a psychological state. Agnosticism is a psychological state about a proposition. But if you really want to make a proposition out of it, you actually could. You can actually say, well, if you say propositionally, I hold no belief either way on a proposition, that's testable because now that has become a proposition. And that's fine. But there's a huge difference between the psychological states and the propositional states. So a baby can't hold a propositional state. They can't hold a disposition towards a proposition, but I still think they have some kind of psychological belief of some measure. But that's just my personal view on that. Let's see here. Wolfgang, why do people like Dillahunty have such a hard time accepting this? What is their reasoning to keep doing the babies are atheist thing? No, I don't think Dillahunty does. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think he holds to the notion that babies are atheist. He does hold that the lack of belief definition is more useful, has more utility. I think he's come around over the years after such pushback by a few people that there are philosophical definitions which are more normative and avoid things like category errors and absurdities like babies are atheist. But I think the reason why Matt Dillahunty doesn't accept most of this, and neither does Art Raw, is because of vested interest not to. They're politicalizing these terms, right? They want to have as many people under the umbrella of atheist for demographic purposes. This is the whole thing behind American Atheist. This was the whole thing behind David Silverman pushing for this narrative and saying, hey, I don't care whether an agnostic says they're not an atheist. They're an atheist by fiat. Well, no, because when you look at all the papers on the subject, that's just completely wrong. But he doesn't care. By fiat, he's going to subsume them because now you have a bigger demographic. And so now you've put those people in that political group and say, hey, look, there's a lot more atheists in the world than there was before, merely because I've subsumed all the other positions under non-theism, like agnosticism and atheism and theological cognitivism and a few other positions as well. So they just subsume them for political reasons. And I think Dillahunty has invested too much of his, his life on this. And so he and Ari can never come out and say, yeah, you know what? Oh, man, all this time, Steve was talking the truth. With the way Steve explains it, and Ozzy explains it, and Malpass explains it, and Bert Pohl explains it, and Ocean explains it. They've been right. And look, here's a polytheist. I can name theist, I agree. Atheist. It's like this stuff is like completely across the board of how we look at that. The reason why you have an actual full-on atheist, anti-theist, theist, polytheist, and agnostics all agreeing on this is because there's objective facts to be had here. There's objective measures you can go read in the literature to realize this and come to the same conclusions. It's not just subjectivity. It's not my opinion over Ocean's. It is Ocean and I looking at the reading material and the literature and reading and going, this is normative. This is how it actually is understood ubiquitously in the literature. Matt Dillahunty and Art Raw can't have that. They'll never agree to that. But if you ever ask them, well, what paper do you have that states that Steve's position is not normative? They can never produce one. They will never produce one. So Intrigued Feline says, you might believe that Santa Claus exists, or maybe that it does not. The question is, do you believe Santa Claus exists? Now that I told you, you only have three options. You have believe, disbelieve, and suspend judgment. And I would have to go with suspend judgment because I don't know what the hell it is, right? When you say something that has some kind of unintelligibility that I don't know what it's corresponding to, a word is a signifier. It's a reference to something else, right? So you have a reference word that I'm looking at that's going to represent a tangible object of some type, right? Some kind of reified version of that. So when people say God exists, that word God is standing for something that actually they believe has some kind of concrete form to it, right? Or even to an atheist, it may not have a concrete form, but they know that the theist believes that has a concrete form. They're just saying, no, there's nothing to be had there. And so if they're therefore, gods don't exist because there's no object to be had that it points to. So I wouldn't know. I wouldn't be able to answer that question. And I mean the word when I say I wouldn't know or I don't know, that's not an epistemological claim about knowledge. That's what's called ordinary doubt, right? If I say I don't know how to answer this question, I'm not lacking knowledge. What I'm lacking is the ability to understand the question. I can't understand it. I don't know how to answer it. Give me the details and maybe I'll be able to answer. So it's not a claim that I don't have knowledge on it. It's a claim of just ordinary doubt or indubitability that I don't have the ability to understand that question. I shouldn't say indubitability, that's kind of doubt, but I don't accept the proposition. If somebody says, hey, do you accept this to be true? I don't know what the hell you're talking about. I'm not going to accept it. But that doesn't mean I say it's false or it's true. It just means I don't have the ability to adequately analyze that particular proposition. Let's see here. Would non-theist be more appropriate? Non-theistic is non-descriptive as well, though. I mean, it doesn't really get you anywhere. It is the case, theist or non-theist. But if I said, hey, Digital Deros, are you a theist or non-theist? And you say, I'm a non-theist. Okay, I know you're not a theist. Still, it doesn't tell you much. And even theist doesn't tell you much either, right? It just means that you believe in God. But these are not very descriptive terms. Because if you're a theist, you could be a Jew, you could be a Mormon, you could be a Buddhist, a Hindu. There's a lot of things that fall under theism. So just saying that you're non-theistic, great. Doesn't tell me whether you're atheist, agnostic, ichtheist. It doesn't tell me any of those things. So there's that strict dichotomy because you have P or not P. So you have theist or not theist. Now, what the American atheists do, and the Atheist Republic does, and the Atheist Community of Austin does, is all they do, and this is, by the way, a semantic argument. I really hate semantic arguments, unless you're talking to someone who really knows their stuff, because then they can be really interesting. But when somebody says, oh, that's just semantics, 90% of the time I've noticed they're just wrong. It's not a semantic argument. But this is a semantic argument when you say non-theism is atheism. What I'm doing at that point, I'm just changing the word. I'm just semantically changing non-theism to be stipulative, to be the same as atheism. Nowhere in the literature is that like that. Nowhere is that found in academia that I can find. That is strictly because people's interpretation of descriptive dictionaries that they want to do it that way. And they're allowed to do it that way in their organizations. By all means. Creationists say species means kind. Creationists say theory means guess. Okay, if you want to play that game, that theory means guess and species mean kind, creationists, okay, you can do that. But at the same token, they're no different than what the American atheists are doing by saying, well, non-theism just means atheism. It's semantics. It's not logic. It's not how it is academically. So their statement, when it says atheism is one thing, a lack of belief, that might apply to their organization, but they don't tell you that. They're deceptively hiding that fact from you. If they were to say, in our organization, we hold this to be the case, that within the way we use these terms, that atheism is one thing, a lack of belief, okay. But they don't. What they just say is they stipulate a global thing, that atheism is merely a lack of belief. But of course, we know that's not true. That statement is inherently false. And I find that to be disingenuous when they do stuff like that. And it leads to things like babies being atheist. Wolfgang says, what would you say to somebody, or how to correct them when somebody claims agnostic atheist? Does that make sense? Yeah. I don't particularly like mixing epistemology with ontology. Now, I know there's some people that use these terms, and they can label themselves a square circle. That's their prerogative, right? Nobody's telling them how to label themselves. That's not the case. But as Matt Dillahunty does point out correctly, if you accept the American atheist definitions of atheism merely being a lack of belief, the phrase agnostic atheist under that condition would be nonsensical. And the reason for that is because knowledge is a subset of belief in justified true belief. So how could you have an epistemic modification if you don't have a belief to begin with? There's nothing there to modify. If I say I believe God does not exist, I can modify that one way or another. I can say, well, I'm agnostic with it, meaning I don't have knowledge about it, but I'm just claiming a belief. Or I can say I'm a agnostic atheist, meaning that I believe that God does not exist, but I also modify that to mean I also know that God does not exist. but I can't know God does not exist unless I believe God does not exist. So there's a nonsensical relationship there, and the symmetry is broken when you have the lack of belief definition. And again, people can use those terms, but why bother? They're so ambiguous. I have a blog that I showed agnostic atheist can be inferred 12 different ways. If that's not ambiguous, what would be? Because I've actually talked to people, what do you mean by agnostic atheist? They all give me different answers. Well, there's no continuity there. There's no communication that we can be had. Because if somebody says, well, I'm agnostic atheist, and I ask, what do you mean by that? And they tell me, okay, fine. But I go to the next person, and they say, I'm agnostic atheist. And I'm going, okay, I know what that means. What this guy told me. Oh, no, he's wrong. I use it this way. Oh, that leads to confusion. So, yeah, I think the term agnostic atheism is just nonsense, because you can't modify atheist if you're using it philosophically speaking like that. Atheist is somebody who believes that God does not exist. So if you believe that God does not exist, what are you agnostic about? You've already weighed in on the proposition, right? If the agnostic is somebody who does not believe either way, and the agnostic actually holds the belief that God does not exist, they've already weighed in. So it just leads to ambiguity and leads to a lot of confusion. In Fegeline, basically, Sinterklaas is a kind of a Dutch-Belgian version of Santa Claus, originating in the 18th century, celebrating his birthday on December 4th with gifts under the chimney. Oh, well, here's the thing. If I was going to justify not just not believing Santa exists, because I don't just say I don't believe I don't believe Santa exists. I actually say I believe Santa Claus does not exist, and I will give reasons for that. Like, we have witnessed parents and family members buying gifts for children. So if I'm looking at an observation and I'm seeing presents underneath the tree, and every time I've ever seen presents underneath the tree, I've seen them come from people every time. That is the most likely abductive argument, right? And, this person I know cannot come down a tree, and I know that it would be impossible for to a single person to travel around the world, to travel, on a reindeer thing to give the presents. I would have to suspend disbelief on that to some degree. Now, you could posit it as a supernatural thing. Okay, fine. Now you're in a different realm, but whatever. But at the same token, I'm looking at an event. I'm looking at something I can actually see, and I'm coming up with an explanation for it that's objective, because I've seen people buy presents. So I can say, based upon that, I'm justified to say I believe I believe Santa Claus does not exist. And when somebody goes say, well, what if you're wrong? Okay, then I had a false belief. Life goes on. People are so afraid of being wrong. So what? What a big deal. Now, I don't think I'm wrong on that. If you believe, Santa Claus exists, okay, show me your reasons for it. Give me, what your burden of proof why that is. I've given you my burden of proof. I've told you why I believe that doesn't exist. And I should point out real quick, because this has come up numerous times. When somebody says, I believe P is false, I believe there are no gods, that entails by logic that you do not believe, right? But the converse doesn't hold. If I say I do not believe God exists, I'm not saying God does not exist. I'm not making that claim, at least logically. However, and this is going to probably piss off a lot of people, normatively in speech act and normatively in communication, there's something called negation raising, where we take it to be the case. Most people who say I don't believe in God, communicatively wise, are saying they believe God doesn't exist. Now, that's not always the case. There's an implicature there. And there's what's called a perlocutionary act, where the listener thinks to themselves, what am I hearing here? So a locution is something I say. I say, I do not believe God exists. The illocution might be that I'm saying to somebody, I actually believe there are no gods. The perlocutionary act is them thinking to themselves, hey, what? Steve says he doesn't believe in gods, but he's actually telling me he believes gods don't exist. That's all fine. That's generally how we have a communication with each other. There's a compact with each other, these types of things. And you say, well, that sounds weird. Well, really? If I say, and I'm using Ocean because Ocean made this video, but I say, hey, Ocean, do you like cake? And he says, I don't like cake. I'm like, okay, well, you know what? I'm gonna have dessert tonight, but I'm not gonna get him cake because he doesn't want cake. We can infer that. There's a perlocutionary act that I have that if Ocean says he doesn't like cake, he's not gonna want cake for dinner, right? Or for dessert. Why I'm cooking for him, I don't know. Go with okay? But you know what? I could be completely wrong on that because there's no entailment there. Maybe he really does want to have cake tonight because he had a bad day. He just wants to be miserable and sit down and eat something he doesn't like. right? So by him saying, I don't like cake, most of us would say that's he doesn't want cake, right? We can make that inference because that's how we communicate. Doesn't mean it necessarily has to hold. So when somebody says, it's the same thing like when I say, hey, Ocean, what time is it? And he says, oh, I believe that it's 4 a.m. Well, yeah, he's telling me that it's 4 a.m. He's telling me that he's holding that be the case, that propositionally, it's 4 a.m., right? I don't ask him, well, what do you mean by you believe? Could it be wrong? No, that's not how we communicate. Or if I say, do you have the time, Ocean? And he says, yeah. That's not how we communicate. If I say, hey, Ocean, do you have the time? He has understood that to be, I'm asking for the time. I want something out of him. I want to know something about the state of affairs of the universe to the best of his ability and knowledge based upon some kind of reliable mechanism, being his watch or something. So we have these compacts with each other, how we function in society. And these beliefs are no different when it comes to the God claim. When somebody says they don't believe, almost always, if you really kind of talk to them, they'll tell you eventually, they'll say something that indicates they really do have the belief that gods don't exist. They'll say, all gods are bullshit. Or, you know what? Yeah, they're all fairy tales. But you know what? I just lack a belief. That's where you start getting into some dishonesty where theists will jump on that and go, this person's not, being an honest agent. This is what Ocean and I talk about a lot. Honest agents. You cannot say, I merely lack a belief, but all gods are bullshit. That's not an honest agent, right? Because you're taking your actual beliefs and you're hiding them behind a mere lack of belief, which has a burden of proof, but a much lesser one. Somebody asked, some people compare babies to old people, especially ones with Alzheimer's. So once an old person gets diagnosed with a disease, are they innocent? Yeah, I think beliefs are dispensational. There's what's called dispensational concurrent beliefs. We don't actively have beliefs, right? We don't concurrently keep reevaluating every belief that we have. We have a belief, we formulate it, we stick it in the back of our brain. And by the way, I think that our brains actually do that on their own. I think our brains actually tell us what our beliefs are, and we just kind of accept it. I don't think we actively be able to change our beliefs. It's called dosastic involuntarism. But I think that if somebody can't evaluate a dispensational belief any longer, then yeah, they might be construed as innocent again because they've lost that ability to analyze the proposition. But again, it's one of those questions of same thing with a person in a coma. Does that person have any beliefs? Well, yeah, they're just not concurrent. They're not active beliefs, but they have them. They're in there somewhere, but they're not constantly reevaluating them. But if you lost the ability, completely lost, if that memory is gone, right, of the proposition, I would be okay with them saying they're innocent again. Eric says, what is the difference between atheism and theological cognitivism? Oh my God. That's a rough one because we're going to be talking about with that Aussie hopefully coming up. We've been trying to. I can give you my brief distinction between them, and I'm going to be running it by Aussie. Theological and cognitivist, as I understand it, would be more along the lines of somebody who not only thinks God talk is meaningless, but propositions do not hold values when it comes to when it comes to the ontological questions of God or any questions relating to God. So there's something called moral non-cognitivism. And moral non-cognitivism states that moral propositions don't hold any truth value. They're not truth apt. Such examples would be emotivism or prescriptivism. And emotivism would just be like, stealing is wrong. It's not a proposition. It's just saying, boo stealing, right? But we know that stealing is wrong if you're a cognitivist. Is true or false. It is the case, or it's false. It's not the case, right? So we have to understand that these terms, non-cognitivism, is not so much is it make sense or is it cognitive in our brains. It's relating to a proposition. So a theological non-cognitivist says the proposition God exists is meaningless. It's not truth apt. It cannot be true or false because it's not expressing anything. There's no object there, God, to even be valued if there's true or false because there's not a concept there. People don't even know what the God concept is. They're not describing anything. That's atheism as well, that the entire meaningless God talk is all meaningless. So the real difference is, if I had to make a distinction, is that the theological cognitivist expressly is stating that the propositions are not truth apt, while atheists are just saying that the God talk are meaningless, even though both are saying God talk is meaningless. That's how I'm looking at it. I don't know how other people look at it. I've heard different things. I know Graham Oppie has written about it. I know Ozzy has talked about it. I think everybody's kind of saying the same thing, but maybe a little bit worded differently. That's my personal view from my understanding. We can go from there. The only thing that I wanted to get into was whether there was a Fred Geach embedding problem with theological cognitivism, and what that actually means in moral context is that the expressivist and prescriptivist has to be able to explain how you get complex syllogisms, complex structures from simple ones, such that if I say stealing is wrong, that's true or false as a proposition. All right. But if I say boo stealing, if I just replace that proposition with boo stealing, what does that mean? It's not propositional at that point. It's not true or false. So how do I get complex syllogisms out of that if I can't embed anything in there? It just doesn't make any sense. So the non-cognitivist has to explain how you get complex structure out of saying things like boo stealing, or prescriptives would be like stealing is bad, or stealing is wrong would be prescribed as don't steal, right? A directive, don't steal. But don't steal is neither true or false. That's a directive. So a non-cognitivist is saying that these are not truth-apt propositions. So again, with the theological non-cognitivists, they're just saying, well, God exists is not meaningful. It can't be true or can't be false because there's no propositional value to be had there. But again, my personal view on it. Wow, you guys are going crazy in the live chat. Does it make sense? Feeling says, does it make sense to say one is agnostic apatheist? No, because an apatheist is somebody. An apatheist is more of. It's not really a disposition toward a proposition. An apatheist is more of a state, more of a expression of I don't care, right? So an apatheist doesn't really care. So how could you be agnostic if you don't? I mean, well, there is something called apatheistic agnosticism. I've heard this before, and that would be somebody who says, "Hey, look, I have no position either way because I just don't give a shit." So in that case, maybe it does make sense. You know what? I'm going to go with it. Maybe it does, because I can make the argument that, you know what, I don't care. And I used to call myself this, an apatheistic, theological, and cognitivist agnostic. And there's reasons for that. So I would use them very differently. But I'm not a theological cognitivist because I really couldn't substantiate that any longer. And an apatheist, I do say I'm an apatheistic only for the fact that I don't really care so much if God exists or not. I like the discussions, right? But the actual finding out if God exists or not through conversation is never going to happen to me, right? If God exists, it's going to be some metaphysical way I have that knowledge. And talking to Ocean is never going to convince me that gods exist or not, I don't think, right? At least to why I can have knowledge of it. So I'm kind of apatheistic whether God exists or not in that aspect. So yeah, I'm okay with agnostic apatheist. They're describing different things, though. You're just saying I don't have a belief either way because I just don't give a shit to evaluate it, right? So you're modifying why you're agnostic. Just like an evidential agnostic is somebody who says, I'm agnostic because there's no evidence either way. I have not seen any evidence to convince me either way. Now, it's a poor justification of why that is, but it's an actual position. So when atheists say, hey, you know what, I'm an atheist because I've not seen evidence to convince me, they're actually they're exuding a evidential agnosticism position, believe it or not. Right? Now, you can call yourself anything you want. People are going to say, well, Steve's saying that they're not really atheists. They're evidential agnostics. Well, no. I'm just telling you what that would be considered in philosophy would be more of an evidential agnostic. But they want to call that atheist? Knock yourself out. But this goes back to why would you bother? Babies aren't atheists either for the same reason, right? You're just labeling them that. Why don't you express what you really are holding to? It's a better way to have granularity in your discussions. Why say you're an atheist when you're just saying, I lack a belief either way? That's not telling anybody anything. If you say, I'm an atheist because I believe gods are bullshit, that's telling somebody something. If I just say I'm an atheist because I believe gods do not exist, that's telling somebody something. Okay? Yeah, Andrew is basically right. I don't know and I don't care, right? Apatheistic agnostic. I don't know and I don't care, which is fine. I got no problem with that. I describe myself that for a long time of an apatheistic agnostic because I don't know and I don't care. But again, I don't know is not, to me, an epistemological position. It is a ordinary doubt position, right? I have no position either way on that proposition of God existing or not. I don't weigh into that. And this, of course, is where Tom jumps in and says, you don't know the difference between epistemology and ontology. Yeah, okay. When you hear T-Jump say that, you know he doesn't. You know T-Jump has reached a brick wall in his understanding, and he throws that out there as a defense mechanism, by the way. Watch. Unirock, hey, what's up, buddy? Let's see here. We got Manya. Where's Manya? I didn't see her. We got the golden unicorn. I didn't see her. Paul says, I'm going to go to bed and saw Steve streaming. Damn you. Yeah, well, I was actually going to stream Battlefield 1942 to Twitch. And then Ocean told me about his video, so I was going to wait till after that. So I might be on Twitch later, just if somebody wants to play Battlefield 1942 with shits and giggles. By the way, just out of curiosity, how many people watched Ocean's video? I have it in the video description, so go watch it. Go leave a comment on it. Again, I'm telling you, his video was right. So any atheist who goes on his video that says he got something wrong, they really need to have an argument. Don't let them get away with this because by fiat or because of a dictionary. If they argue from a dictionary, they are no different than a creationist just saying, well, evolution is just a guess because there's a theory, and theory is a guess, therefore evolution is a guess. That is exactly the level that they're at. Don't let them do that. Let them actually give actual argumentation for why they think babies are atheist. Now, there are some pragmatic reasons why people might do it for value, right? For demographics. But even then, that can be argued against very easily because, well, babies don't vote. Sure, if you want to say every baby is an atheist, therefore there's more atheists than there what you would consider to be an atheist out there to raise your numbers, to artificially inflate them. Okay, if that's your goal, right? If that's your agenda to artificially inflate numbers, sure, then it would be better for you to say atheists or babies are atheists. But for the most people, no, right? Because that's not their goal to artificially inflate numbers for demographic reasons. They really want to have practicality in why they use these terms. And to say a baby is an atheist, there's no practical reason for that. Or worse than rocks. Oh, man. Oh, when people say rocks are atheist, it boggles my mind by why atheists would put themselves in that position. We have a lot of atheists in the live chat. Philosophical atheists, people that actually believe God does not exist. Which, by the way, I've actually had atheists tell me don't exist. I've actually had numerous atheists tell me, there's no atheist out there that says gods don't exist. Really? Because I know a ton of them. An absolute ton of them. I find that most atheists that have been educated are atheists in the positive case. Most of them are. Because they realize that the negative case, the negative atheist, the I don't believe, doesn't tell you anything. And it doesn't help in any kind of discussion. It doesn't convince the theist. If a theist says, I believe God exists, and the atheist just says, well, I don't, okay, they walk away. Right? Where are you going to go from that? If the atheist just says, hey, theist, you have all the burden of proof. I just got to sit here and just tell you I don't accept it. What good is that? But if you have a theist who says, hey, I believe God exists, and you have an atheist going, look, you're wrong on this. Gods don't exist. Let me tell you why. Now you have a discussion. Right? Now you have two people with a conflicting argument, right? Taking the opposite positions from each other. That's a hell of a lot more difficult position debate to have. And this is why a lot of new debaters, a lot of new people coming into the community, they don't want that, right? They don't want to have to defend anything. They want it easy, right? Well, it's not easy. And I get why they want to make it easy on themselves, this easy lack of believism. And that, by the way, I think I coined that. I'm not sure. If anybody else coined it first, let me know. But I thought about that the other day. Easy believism. So easy lack of believism. Yeah, but again, you're not going to be, if your goal is to deconvert people, if your goal is to have a meaningful conversation with a theist to deconvert them or to change them to your position, and you just say, I don't believe you, you're not going to do anything to them. But if you say, I don't believe you, and let me tell you why you're wrong, because I believe that you're wrong, and let me show you all the evidence I've got against you, wow, now somebody's going to be like, you might be right. I've deconverted young Earth creationists from young Earth creationism that way. If I would have said to Wayne Fillmore, like during our debate, and I would have said to him, hey, Wayne, you don't believe macroevolution exists, but I believe it does. And he would have said, hey, well, you have all the onus, I have nothing. We wouldn't have had a meaningful discussion because I would have just not been interested in having a discussion with him. But he actually tried to make an argument, right? And if I would have said to him, hey, you believe evolution is false. I don't believe that, but I have coming into this debate, you have all the evidence to show me why it's wrong. I don't have anything to show you. I wouldn't have convinced him that young Earth creationism was bullshit and that evolution was the case. So I think atheists do themselves a very big disservice by going this easy lack of believism approach. I hope that sticks, by the way. And by the way, if somebody thought of that first, go for it. Let me know if they did, but if it was completely co-evolutionary. I don't recall ever seeing it before, so I could be wrong. I read a lot of stuff, but I don't think that I did, but I like that term. Easy, lack of believism. All right, so what else you guys got? Any other questions? And who wants to play Battlefield 1942? Paul sent that to me, so I was kind of practicing with it. It's been a long time. Violet says, I don't like people trying to convert me to their beliefs, so I don't know why other atheists feel it's okay to deconvert somebody. Let them make their own choice for themselves. Because people have conversations, Violet. We are in a community with people who have very different viewpoints. Now, I agree with you. I don't want to go out and be accosted by somebody on the street trying to convince me of their positions, right? If I see somebody talk about something, if I want to go up to them and talk to them, I can. Right? I can go up there and say, hey, you know what? I hear you preaching up here. I disagree with you. Let's have a conversation. And then I give them the reasons why I think they're wrong. I'm giving them my burden of proof. That's fine. Right? But when people have these conversations and hangouts, and Ocean and I go way, way back. I mean, Ocean's like one of the first people I've ever met in this community. So we go back in the days where this was normative, where people would sit in hangouts for 24 hours a day and just talk about these arguments. That's one of the reasons I think Ocean and I, hate to say it, we got pretty good at these things. Because we had the base level down early. We were learning from the people that actually knew their shit. We had very intelligent philosophers come in, and we had these discussions for 6 years, right? Give or take. And so we see what happens when somebody comes fully deconverted, and they're now suddenly a white belt atheist, and they're running the same arguments we've seen a million times. Babies are atheist, or they're running, atheists don't have a burden of proof, or, Steve's an idiot. These are all white belt atheist arguments we see. So we've been there. You're welcome, Ocean. Yeah, I would love to send, you're welcome for sending people to your video. And again, clickbaity title. Hope you don't mind a little jab at you, because again, didn't even mention me in this video, whatever. But I want to do a review on it because I get props where props is due. I'm not one of those ideological, dogmatic people that says, oh, well, Ocean's a polytheist. He has to be wrong across the board. And therefore, any video that he makes is going to be crap, right? No, this was a good video. He got it right. And I think that should apply to anybody in any group, whether it's theist or atheist. I don't see a lot of theists calling out other theists unless it's something dogmatic, right? It's they say, well, this person says this in the scripture, but we hold to this belief. Okay, fine. But they don't really call people out that much in public for other things. And atheists are even worse, right? So I think that when you think somebody else has made a mistake, or you see somebody being dogmatic, call them out on it. But also give them props, like Ocean getting it right. I think he did a wonderful job on it. Adam, $2. Did you like the Darth versus dumpster fire? Oh my God, that there's just no words to describe that event. I can't even call it a debate. If you guys go to Ask Yourself channel, it was the Ask Yourself archive channel, and so that's where he archives the discords. And Tom Jump had a discussion with Darwin's deity. I could sum it up like this. Imagine the dumbest atheist you've ever met in your life having a discussion with the dumbest theist you've ever met in your life. That's all it was. And Tom Jump lost. And the reason why he lost is because he let Darwin's deity control the conversation. It wasn't that Darwin's deity was more correct than anything. He made some blunders. But I got to tell you, go watch it and then let me know what you think if this is not the case. Did Tom Jump at any time, get more than 2, maybe 3 sentences out at any given time contiguously? Because if he did, I didn't hear it. Literally every 5-6 words that Tom Jump had, Darwin's deity interrupted him. And did anybody see this discussion? If that wasn't the case, please let me know, because I listened to it quite intently and I wasn't really paying attention for that. But it seemed to be the case that Darwin's deity was just shutting him down every 5 seconds with no moderation, which was, by the way, planned. This was supposed to be a division by zero thing and watch the universe explode. And pretty much what it was. The only thing I got wrong is I said Darwin's deity when he was going to rage quit in about 15 minutes. Was wrong. It was 45. Nobody's perfect. But he did eventually rage quit. Let's see here. Hannah says, how do you get Sweet Heathen to date you? Bribery? Bribery usually works. Yeah, I don't know. Luck of the draw. Pity, I guess. But I'm cool with that. But we did have a fun time in LA, and we're gonna be going to Dallas here in January. But yeah, her motives, I couldn't tell you. I have no idea. Um, we just happen to get along, I guess. I still think it's pity though. Unirock says, "Do you have a pug group, Steve? Are you talking about for gaming? I have a gaming group, kind of, sort of, but I don't know how I'm gonna work the Battlefield 1942 because I've only played solo. You have to do like through servers. I was hoping to get like a server set up on my computer and then people can call in with the IP address. I haven't figured that out yet, so I'll work on that if you want to play 1942. Uh, oh yes, and then going back to the babies thing, when somebody says, "Well, Steve, how can you say babies aren't atheists because they don't have a God belief?" They're not understanding the topic, right? They're not understanding that just because you don't have a God belief, you are not inherently, by necessity, an atheist. Only if you accept the paradigm, the schema put out by American Atheist and the Atheist Community of Austin, would that be the case. In that schema, if you're not a theist, then yes, by necessity, you would be an atheist in that scope. But it's in that scope. I'm not in that scope. I'm not in that group. Philosophy is not in that group. All of academia are not in that scope, just like you're not in the scope of creationism. So when somebody says, "Well, Steve, in the scope of creationism, there is a guess." Okay, that's true. I'm not in creationism. Why would I hold to that scope? Same thing here. Theism and atheism are called contradictories, meaning that if theism is true, atheism is false. God exists, you believe it, you're right. You're an atheist and you believe that God does not exist, you're right. Both of them can't be true though, and both of them can't be false, right? One of the two people, theist and atheist, are going to be correct. You can't have that if it's merely a not belief. If you say atheism is merely a lack of belief position, there's no value on that, right? Because then you can't say it's true or false. What does it mean to be true or false if it's only lack of belief? It's only true or false if you're holding a positive case. Because if I say, I believe God does not exist and God doesn't exist, I'm right. But if I say I lack a belief God exists, the only thing you can evaluate that with is if I actually do have that lack of belief. And I have to give reasons why I have that lack of belief, right? But that's the proposition at that point, merely that I lack a belief. It's no longer on the ontology. It's no longer on the proposition. That's why it's called a secondary order. So when people say that, atheism is merely just lack of belief, you're doing themselves a disservice because now you're saying atheism cannot be true. And how a theist hasn't latched onto that, maybe they have, is beyond me. Because if a theist says, well, wait a minute, you're saying that atheism is merely a lack of belief, so you're saying atheism cannot be true. They would be right. Because there's no truth value to be had there. Think about that, guys. Why would you, as an atheist, not want atheism to be true? If you're out there advocating atheism is the proper position and that you wanted people away from theism, why would you have a position that cannot be true? Lack of belief atheism cannot be true merely because it's not truth apt. Now, is there a theist out there that agrees with me on that? Does that make sense to one of them? Let's see here. Yeah, I'll give you I'll give you the DM. Range Gaming sent me the Abandonware 1942 version, and again, I'm just fiddling with it. It's been years since I played, but I think that we got to fight, I don't know, 4 people together and just 2x2 assaulting the beach. 2 assault, 2 defend. That'd be fun. We could do that maybe in an hour or so if we can figure that out. See here. On the T jump versus DD thing was a fucking mess. Oh my god, Ocean, you are understating that, dude. It was so bad. And what's worse is I don't know if you stuck around, Ocean, but Tom Jump was doing an after show because DD, rage quit like he always does. And there was a guy in there. I don't know if you guys know who he is. His name's Doorman. That was asking him some logic questions, and these were not easy questions. These were dealing with set theory and what was it called? The well-ordered principle and the contiguous. Was it what is it for the reals? What hypothesis is it? The contiguous hypothesis? No, that's not right. Also known as the well-ordering principle. But anyways, he was asking him very detailed stuff. And he's like, oh, John Duff's like, I don't know any of that. I was like, okay, so he asked him some other logic questions. Didn't know any of that. And Tom Jump goes, he's like, well, I thought you said you were like you're extremely well versed in logic. And Tom Jump just was getting pissy as can be. He's like, okay, let's change the subject. So they started talking about ontology and moral ontology. And this guy was just obliterating Tom Jump, going, dude, you're just all over the place. You're talking about moral realism, but I don't think you know what moral realism is, because you're talking about this and that and this and that. And come to find out that the guy Doorman is a PhD in philosophy. Go figure. Tom Jump was like, dude, you just don't know what you're talking about. And I knew that the guy was a PhD because Ask Yourself told me. But I'm like, holy crap, Tom Jump. You cannot sit there and tell PhDs in their field that they don't know what they're talking about when you are sounding like a babbling idiot. That doesn't do anybody any good. And by the way, I am going to subscribe to a conspiracy theory. Yes, I actually am. Here's a conspiracy theory that I am. You remember like Kyle had the conspiracy theory with the Sphinx? Mm-hmm. I have my own. This is somebody else's, but I'm adopting it. I'm accepting it. And I don't remember who came up with it, so please forgive me. But the conspiracy is this. James from Modern Day Debate is a theist, people know. He's using Tom Jump to make all atheists look bad. He's using Tom Jump as a way to take down atheists once and for all. I know what you're doing, James. I see it, dude. I convinced that conspiracy theory is true. So I'm going to go with that. That he's basically using the way atheists use Darwin deity to make fun of theists, and they're using Darwin's deity to take down theism. I think Tom Jump is what theists are doing to take down atheism. I honestly believe that. Yeah. Okay. Let's see here. DD was in the driver's seat for the entire conversation, then left on his own terms. Ocean Keltoi. Ocean. Yeah, he left on his own terms, but he still kind of rage quit, I thought. Right? Because he's like, you're not answering any questions, you're done. Well, Tom Jump was answering, but he wasn't answering anything of value. He was just throwing out words, hoping that it would placate DD, and we both know hit the prescript script, right? We didn't understand. When DD asked, how do you know something, and talk about epistemology, he's asking very specific questions. But Ask Yourself had asked Tom Jump before, well, what is your theory of justification on these things? Are you one of the big three? And Tom Jump's like, well, I don't know. He doesn't know what foundationalism is, coherentism, infinitism, non-herentism. He doesn't know what any of that stuff means. And yet he's writing a book on epistemology? That's like a mathematician not understanding algebra. I mean, how could you write a book on epistemology if you don't even know what theory of justification you hold to or why? That's just, to me, bizarre. I think he's this massive decay. Sean says, I can't say you're wrong. Thank you. I assume that you meant on the theist using that argument that I gave him to use, that lack of belief atheism can't be true. Let's see here. Jam Fran, hey buddy, how you been, man? He says, makes sense to me. Lack theism as a proposition doesn't have a truth value to the ontology of God's existence. Also see my above comment I tagged you in. Oh, I must have missed that. Okay, yeah, you're totally right on that. But let me scroll up here. Oh man, you guys make it difficult. Too many people talking. I got too many people watching. Steve, we know your agnostic atheism rant, probably. No, that's Jeremy. One person. What'd you send me, Jay? You're going to have to write it again. Copy it and paste it again because I don't see it. I also want to put a shout out to your muse out there, by the way. Shout out to her. Vegan Atheist Coral, shout out to you. She's our a new official nerdy girl. We have a new nerdy girl, yeah. I got to catch up on this stuff. I'm way behind. Yeah, sorry, Jam. You're going to have to repost it. Ocean, I don't think T-Jump did any research on DD before going into the debate. Oh, that's clear. Which is weird, because how do you not know who DD is? I mean, we remember when DD came across from Pal Talk. And we remember, I mean, you and I sat in Nadia's room and would listen to DD and Brett Keane, and just, go, what the hell is this precept crap? Remember that one guy, Stevens? He was pretty good at it, actually, but we learned how to fight against precept. In fact, I became kind of friends with Cite and Prunicate. We actually get along with the guy, but I learned how to defeat his arguments. And so I don't think T-Jump did any research on DD, but moreover, I don't think T-Jump has done any research or any prep on any debate. All he does is go in there and just run his same shtick every single time. He's like the Ken Hovind of atheism. He has a script. That's all he sticks to. And then when somebody like myself comes in there, throws him off his script by asking him difficult questions, that's where he throws out one of his 30 things that we came up with. You just have your head up your ass. You know the difference between epistemology and ontology. You're just wrong. He throws all the same script out that Ken Hovind would do. Watch. And by the way, if you want to have those 30 things we came up with, they're out there. Go out to Ask Yourselves Discord. He posted it. Arado says DD race quitting is his MO. Yeah, by the way. You're absolutely right. Let's see here. You've asked for $2. I found this stream very informative. Thank you. I appreciate that. Again, I don't really do a lot of these where it's just myself. I usually have people, with me and stuff, but occasionally I just want to drink some coffee, review a video, because I don't like doing standalone videos. And I thought Ocean's video was short, succinct, to the point. I knew about the topic. Might as well just do a quick review on it. That's taking actually over an hour. That's how I like to do things. I like to do things in real time. UniRock likes to do things in real time. That's our way we like to come across on YouTube, because that's basically what we do. It's very difficult for me to make a video. I don't like it. Even what Ocean did, it would probably take me a long time to make something like that. And I always hate making standalone videos because I think to myself, I could have done this differently. I could have added this. I should have said this. But in real time, I can change things on the fly and go back and correct myself, even though it's not editable and I don't edit anything out of my videos. I like the fact that it's involving the live chat, being asked questions and be able to answer in real time, which you can't really do on a standalone video unless you do a premiere, but even then you're only in the live chat, right? So Anna Andrews says, I like to forget who DD is. Wouldn't we all? Yeah, anybody who doesn't know who DD is, I don't know what to tell him. He is just probably the most duplicitous debater I've ever seen in my life. He is the world's worst Christian I've ever seen in my entire life. Just a very, very nasty person, and just gets everything wrong. He actually argued that affirming the consequent was a logical inference, rule of inference. I just don't know how he understood that to be the case. I mean, he also argues that agnosticism is nonsensical, and you actually get into his argument why he thinks agnosticism is impossible. It all stems from the fact that he insists God exists. So from his point of view, God exists by necessity. Therefore, if you don't have a position on it, you're basically lying. It's a little more complicated than that, but yeah, it does stem from his ontology that he disaffirms by fiat God exists and cannot be any other way. Lucifer Almighty says, it was hilarious when he said DD was confusing ontology with epistemology when he always does it himself. And, and he said that, and I got to tell you, DD wasn't. That's the funniest thing. DD wasn't confusing ontology with epistemology. And so I was like, Tom Jump, if you're going to throw something out there, why would you throw that as a standby? Because it was clear that there was not a confusion by DD on that. Jimmy Stevens, thank you. I couldn't think of his name. Jimmy Stevens was good on those debates. Yeah. He was a precept, but he was an honest preceptor, and that's rare. The only time I saw Jimmy Stevens, and I don't think he was intentionally dishonest, but he was in a hangout, and they basically nailed him on the precept thing. And he was right on that precipice, right? He was right on that going, oh, this is untenable any longer. And all of a sudden, he just doubled down and started from scratch again. And I was really disappointed in that because Jimmy Stevens, I thought he was going to snap out of it because you guys don't see much precept any longer. When precept came around, man, you saw it all over the place. Everywhere you went, Discord, Hangouts, every theist was out there running the precept script. Then people learned how to defeat it. And now you don't see much of it. And by the way, you can thank Ocean to some degree, myself, and many other people like Floyd, FP, Alex Malpass, Ozzy, Burt Poole. Who else were some of the old timers? Let me think here. Naughty even. Those guys were all great at just dismantling the precept proposition. And by the way, I ran into Nadia in Ask Yourself Discord, and she's doing great, and I'm thrilled to death. So if anybody knows who Nadia is, not Nadia Vet Chambers. Jam says, atheist, even when defined as a lack of belief, is a cognitive position. When you call babies atheists, it implies they can cognitively understand the concept as they can. Yeah, I agree with that as well. This goes back to Ocean's video where they have to understand the proposition. And just by having some default position that they claim, which does not exist, it doesn't serve any purpose. And by the way, I challenge anybody to go find in any paper where atheism is some kind of default position. Normatively speaking, it's not. It just cannot be. It makes no sense. That's like saying I have a jar of gumballs. They're either even or odd ontologically, assuming they're quantized. either 1 or 0, even 1, odd 0, they cannot be any halves, then you can have a position that you don't accept they're even or odd, right? You can be agnostic on that. But an atheist cannot evaluate that. An atheist can't say, well, I don't believe either one. It doesn't tell you what their position is. There is no default position to be had on that. But it is cognitive, yes. A lot of questions. I got a lot of mods. Yeah, Nadia's doing great. Yeah. Yeah, Ocean says, I hate atheism as default position. Right, because it's unsustainable. When people start talking about the no position, they're talking about science. They're talking about experimentation. And you don't experiment whether God exists or not. I mean, people can devise experiments, I guess, theoretically. But God was excluded from science for a reason, right? Science came from natural philosophy. And natural philosophy didn't want to deal with gods. They wanted to find natural explanations. So they just put the God claim completely to the side and said, we're not dealing with God or any kind of supernatural stuff. It's a methodological naturalism, right? That doesn't mean if somebody says, hey, we have poltergeist, we wanted to test for it. You can disprove it. You can come up with a different solution or a different explanation. Maybe it was like rats or something. But according to science, you could never actually prove that they're ghosts, or it never actually demonstrate there are actually ghosts there. It would fundamentally change the nature of science, because then now supernatural causations are in there, which is limited by methodological naturalism. So methodological naturalism is the philosophy of science that limits and constrains the scope of science for a reason, and that makes science very strong. So you don't want science evaluating the God claims. So when you start talking about these null hypotheses, you're out of the scope, right? Because it's not a null hypothesis. It's not a default. And any atheist who tells you this, ask them for evidence. Ask them for their citations. And I got to tell you, they actually tell me, I don't need any citations for that. I don't need any evidence for that. Well, wait a minute. You're asking theists for evidence all the time. Isn't that a double standard? If you claim something, back it up with something. People know that I have galore amount of evidence for my citations. I've got a list of things. I even have a page to my citations. I even gave one for Ocean for his video that he asked me for. Right? I mean, if an atheist tells you something and they say, this is the case, atheism is merely lack of belief only, or it's a null hypothesis, ask them for evidence. And 9 times out of 10, you know what happens? They block you. And the reason why I want people to do these things is not because I'm against atheism. It's because I want atheists to be better atheists. I want atheists to be better interlocutors. I want better conversations. And I'm a non-theist, so I'm actually in the same boat as the atheist as far as both of us being non-theist, right? So, I mean, I'm not against the atheists. A lot of atheist groups out there I fully support, like Atheist Edge, right? Huge fan of Atheist Edge and Jim Hall. Fully Deconverted with Vino. He's great. I even get along with Richard Carey, even though I think that he takes his arguments too far, and I'm not a mythicist. But I'm not against atheists. I literally want atheists to be better. And so I think even Ocean would agree with that. As a polytheist, he would rather have atheists stop using these really mundane, low-level things like babies or atheists. It's entry-level stuff. I mean, how are you going to start having conversations about the argument from contingency or modal ontological theories if you're way the hell down here at first grade level? You're not going to be able to get up to these levels up here that you want to get to, because you're using the arguments babies are atheist, right? By the way, hey, I thought I saw him. Oh, Cyrus! Hey, what's up, man? Been a while. Surprised you remember how to get to my channel, Cyrus. By the way, I didn't give you an invite. Do you want an invite? I'll open this up for a few minutes if people want in. You just got to let me know. Matter of fact, let me Twitter open. By the way, I do everything through Twitter. Also, let's let you know, I still have my list. If you want the list to be on the list for the pre-approved, and I can check you out, know who you are, and know my due diligence on you, unlike Katie Polson, who does none. In the video description, there's a special for this group that I have. Email me at that you want to join. Right, that's the only thing I use an email for, and I won't probably have it for very long. But the email that I have in the video description, use that to message me saying, please add me to the group. Here I am. Here's my Facebook page, or something about who you are. You don't have to dox yourself, but that I know you're not just some troll or something, that I can actually vet you. Nobody wants in because I got no messages. Okay. Let's see here. Hand sanitizer. If it's acceptable to have a belief based upon faith, God is real, regardless of proof, is having a belief based upon faith as no God equally valid? Well, there's something that needs to be said here. The word faith, and this is where Aaron gets us some issues, the Epistevist, is not just having a belief without evidence, right? It's more of a trust. It's more of a faith as in confidence. I have faith in my, I have faith in my friends are going to do the right thing, right? I have a faith that people that I care about are going to tell me the truth. So it's not a matter of just blind faith in that case when it comes to Epistevist. But if you have a belief in something, it needs to be justified somehow to be rational, whether it be through evidentialism and evidence, which is empirical, or by prudentialism. I have a goal that I want to get you, so I think it's prudential to do it this way, or pragmatism. It's the best course of action because for pragmatic reasons. Why do you look both ways when you cross the road? There's no ontological reason why you should that. Well, it's pragmatic to do so because I don't want to get killed, right? So I think when somebody says, well, I believe God exists, they need to give reasons or they're being irrational. At the same time, you believe God does not exist and you don't give reasons. To at least yourself, you don't have to give it to somebody else per se, but to yourself, you're irrational, right? I don't want to have irrational positions. Irrational's fine. An irrational belief is okay. That's a belief that you don't justify, but there's reasons why you don't justify it, like foundational beliefs. I believe external minds exist irrationally. I have no evidence that external minds exist other than my just blind faith that they do. Because any evidence that changes the likelihood of external minds existing is also the same amount of evidence for these minds to exist in my own mind, right? This is called the problem of hard solipsism, right? So we can't use any evidence to determine whether or the other if external minds exist. We have to accept on faith that they do. These are called faith-based commitments. So when an atheist is out there, hating these words like belief and faith, because, they say, well, religious people have co-opted them and they're using them differently. So what? Big deal. Why be afraid of words if they have usages, right? I have faith that reality is real. Oh, by the way, another thing Tom Jump couldn't figure out when Darwin's deity was asking him, well, how do you know reality is real? And he's like, well, reality is real, because of definitions. Reality is real because it's real. Like he's misunderstanding what deity's asking him because he doesn't understand foundationalism. A foundational would say, well, reality is real because I accept it to be axiomatically the case as a properly basic belief that is unjustified, cannot be inferentially justified, nor can be didactically inferred. That's an acceptable answer to that. Do you think Tia Jumper is going to answer that way? No. Right? Because he doesn't know how to answer those kinds of questions. Let's see here. Yeah, James could come in. By the way, Converse Contender, what's up, buddy? We drop in too. Like I said, give me a message here. Oh yeah, sirs. I got you. I got you, buddy. I don't know how I'm gonna do this. One quick shoot, because I don't really have a hangout going. How about Google Hangouts? Just bring it in that way. 1 second. Talk amongst yourselves. All right. Got it. Invite people. All right, check your thing there, sirs. Love to have you on board. It should work. And let's see. Babies are egotistical or solipsist. There, argument settled. Yeah, you know what? The needy little fuckers, right? Yeah, right? Let's see here. All they do is think about themselves. They're so narcissistic. But like I said, it's funny. Where you have anti-theists, you have atheists, you have polytheists, you have theists like Converse Contender. All of us can objectively go read something and see this. Everything that I've said is the case, at least to some degree. I mean, I get minor details wrong probably, but everything we would talk about babies and atheism, we all probably agree it's a shit argument that atheists need to stop using.
I'm assuming this is working now.
Hey, there he is. What's up, buddy?
There we go. How's it going, Steve?
You won't be able to see me because I'm using my camera from my OPS, but you know what I look like.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Let me ask the outside check. Can you guys see him? I see it moving on my desktop audio, so I can screen share you or something. I can add you in this way. Well, they can hear you, but video capture device. Get rid of my donkey porn for 1 second. Okay. Nope, that's not video device. You think after all these years I'd figure out OBS, right?
This is why whenever I have other people coming onto the show for whatever reason, I have a separate thing. Because you know how on the left-hand side of your OBS stuff, not your sources area, but you have your scenes area.
Yeah.
I have a scenes for when it's just me with my camera, and I have a scenes for when it's me and multiple people, so I can just click on those and suddenly they're visible.
I got to do something like that. I could definitely use scenes. All right, they can at least see you now. So let me ask the outside chat. Yeah, now you guys will be able to see them, but before you can at least hear them. So, all right. So let me ask you: did you watch Ocean's video? By the way,
I have not watched the video yet. Me and Ocean have the same policy on both of our stuff. If we watch the video, if we look at the video and already kind of know what we're going to be getting into, we usually just talk about each other's content instead of watching it.
No, that's fair enough. No, I don't think you'd have any surprises by this video. There was nothing in there that surprises me. It was straight up exactly how I would have argued it. Same thing that I've been saying for years. So he kind of reiterated my position. People know my position on these things, right? I'm the one that's causing a wedge in the atheist community supposedly, and I noticed Ocean tried picking that up, by the way, because he made a Twitter comment on this. And it's a pretty popular comment. He got like hundreds of people on it, right? I make something divisive like that, and I'm like, you're an idiot.
Yeah, I watched I saw some of the fallout from the comment, and the worst part is that there were people who I do respect who like did comment on it against it. I'm just like, no, don't. Like Dark Matter for one was one of the ones that commented.
I saw that in the video. He put that Dark Matter tweet in there. But one criticism to Ocean's video. One criticism. The tweets were too fast. I couldn't read them. Minor criticism. Okay, but what is Dark Matter? Because one of them was Dark Matter, but what did he say? Because I couldn't read it.
I can actually pull it up probably.
By the way, they can't. You guys can't see Cirrus? I've got it here.
I can see me on your stream. Like I'm looking on your stream.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
I mean, maybe they're used to seeing me as a cartoon, I guess. I don't know. Let's see here.
Thank you, Identify Leviathan. He's taken off. Yeah, I'll check my stream too, just in case.
Where's Ocean's thing?
Move this over here. Yeah, I see you on this. You're right. It's good to go.
Here we go. Babies cannot self-identify. And then it shouldn't be too terribly far down. There we go. Okay, so Dark Matter responds to Ocean saying they cannot self-identify as babies either. But guess what? Okay, well here's the first.
Ooh,
just in that sentence alone, I'm going to go ahead and do. Steve, you've seen my videos. You know that I generally try to stick to the technical jargon when I can. Mm-hmm. So let's go ahead and point out. Would you agree this is a category error? Because a self-identity label is something like atheist. You're talking about your ability to evaluate a proposition, but a baby is not a self-identification label. That is a label that we assign outside of the baby. These are two different categories of identification. There's external identification and internal identification. Internal identification is something like atheist. If you want to argue that atheist is something that we can identify externally instead of internally, then I have a certain inquisition that happened in Spain to talk to you about, because they did that too. And that didn't function very well for that society.
No, you're right. It's most certainly a category error. When we assign a classification to something, we assign a set, and we say anything that meets the criteria for this is in that set. So baby is a subset of humans, a subset of people, whatever you want to define it as, that's fine. But that's a category. That is a specific thing that we as externalists will say, hey, if you meet these criteria, you are going to be called this by joint compact. But again, communication. There has to be some kind of currency of intelligibility in communication, or else we have no ability to relate to each other. So when we say there's a baby, we know what we mean by it, because we're saying this is what we're assigning it to be, as a subset of humans.
And there's another thing that has to be gotten into here, because I don't think this has been covered in as much detail as it needs to in general. I haven't seen Ocean's video yet, so I don't know if he's done it. But one of the areas that people get confused with when it comes to these issues of identity is that there can be external and internal identities that use the exact same language.
Sure.
And as a result, people get confused. We get this all the time with like Christians as an example. There are Christians that will say that Mormons aren't Christians. And then there are Mormons that will say they are Christians. Well, now we have an external identification and an internal identification that are both not completely invalid. There's obviously a no true Scotsman happening on the one hand, but there are Christians that identify anybody out, who's in their out group as non-Christians. And then there are Christians who identify themselves as Christians because X, Y, and Z. These are two instances of internal and external identification that have varying levels of validity.
Yeah, but would you agree that when we look at something, like if you go to Wikipedia, it's going to take it from an externalist view. It doesn't care what the internalized politics are.
Well, true. It's going to. With it's impossible for Wikipedia to talk about self-identification when Wikipedia is not an agent.
Okay, so in that case, when a group like American Atheists says atheism is only a lack of belief, that is an internalized. That is only for their group. That doesn't affect any external understanding of these terms.
That's an internal labeling of something. And if you are attempting to shift the verbal zeitgeist in a way that ends up being what we consider the normative position for atheism, one day that may be the case, and we just accept that, okay, this is the colloquial definition. Go ahead. I mean, I've literally done a fucking video on this.
I've seen it.
If you want to go ahead and just call it the colloquial there, whatever, go at it, have at you. But if you're going to have conversations about philosophy, you're wrong. Because now you're doing the same exact thing that happens when a theist says theory means guess, and you're saying, well, no, we're currently talking about the category of science in which theory has a rigorous definition. It doesn't have a laissez-faire definition in science.
Well, that's
the same thing happening here.
They try to stigmatize philosophy, though. They try to make it, oh, well, philosophy is just useless, not recognizing that something like science is regulated, controlled, and modified and scoped by philosophy.
I'm curious then, do any of them use mathematics? Because would you agree that Pythagoras was a mathematician?
Mm-hmm.
What would Pythagoras have called himself in his own time, though?
Philosopher.
Yes, because the methods that we use for all of these things were born out of what?
Observations of the world.
Well, yes,
natural philosophy.
And most of the thinkers of their times called themselves philosophers because that was, like, we know now that there were some areas that they specialized in, but they still were considered philosophers. They were still exercising philosophy. It's not a useless thing. I'm literally going through God, what's the book? Hold on. Because I did a poll recently asking my audience one of the things that they wanted me to do. And one of them, or a few of them, said they wanted me to read more, like specifically like do deep dives into books more. So right now I am actually going through The Philosopher's Toolkit by Professor Patrick Grimm.
Is it good? I have not. Sounds interesting though.
So
is a lot of the like the precursor for philosophy, like the older stuff, Socrates and Plato, those kind of things?
Actually, no. It's using it references Plato and Socrates, but it's not really doing that. What it's doing is it's taking a myriad of philosophical concepts and trying to break them down in a way that can be explained in like a lecture format. So the first chapter, for instance, is on what's called type 1 and type 2 thinking. Type 1 thinking is your intuitive thinking. This is your first reaction, your knee-jerk reaction. And type 2 thinking is your logical thinking. This is what happens when that knee-jerk reaction is gone, and then you have the ability to logically process what you're doing. It takes that concept and says, okay, this is a thing, put a pin in it. This is chapter 1. When you get to chapter 3, it then talks about the rationale versus emotion conversation, how people argue that, for instance, like an appeal to emotion is always invalid, things like that. It then presents a series of thought problems in going, here are situations where an emotional response is literally required, especially in cases of survival. Now, here's a case in which rational response is required. Here's a case in which you have to apply type 1 thinking. Here's a case in which you have to apply type 2 thinking. If you try to argue that one is better than the other, you're going to have to break down what category you're talking about. And it goes into really good detail
sounds like
over each point.
Sounds like pathos, ethos, and logos approach.
That was in chapter 2.
Yeah, because that
chapter 2
so
chapter 2 did that.
There are ways, there are reasons why to appeal to emotions. There are, I mean, it's not always a fallacy again, but so you can do it by logos. It's pathos, logos, and ethos, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, that was, and like I said, so chapter 1 was type 1, type 2 thinking. Chapter 2 went into a little bit of Plato's teaching on that, and then chapter 3, which I'm currently about to finish chapter 3. Chapter 3 is the one that is dealing with when to properly apply the different styles of thinking. So it's actually a really good book. The only problem I have with it is that the book is essentially a transcription of a lecture. So there are visual aids in a separate PDF that you have to look at while you're reading the book. And that's a little frustrating.
Yeah, somebody asked me the day for logic thing, and I gave them a PDF. It was broken down like chapter was a PDF that I've had, which is very difficult to read. So it's concise. It's definitely has a lot of stuff in it. By the way, somebody had asked if there's any female vegan asked if there's any female philosophers. There are actually. I actually have some papers by them. One of them, two of them, my favorite. One is Dr. Jane Freeman. She's from New York University. She wrote Suspending Judgment on Agnosticism. Very good paper.
There's actually an entire video on that, not just on if there are female philosophers, but on philosophers who are not just a bunch of old white guys.
Yeah.
It's by Philosophy Tube, and it was literally called "Is Philosophy a Bunch of Old White Guys?"
That sounds like Philosophy Tube. Yeah,
it was great.
I really like Zinda, and I'm probably going to butcher her last name, but Dr. Linda Zabowski, Zibagowski. I cannot pronounce her last name. I wish somebody would actually tell me how she actually pronounces it. But she wrote papers on the Gettier problems, and she basically showed in her paper, brilliant papers, but one of them was very, very good. It was her describing that there's no possible way that she believes in a belief at first condition theory that you couldn't have some type of Gettier case because of what's called epistemic luck. And so she argues very, very poignantly, I think.
Can you define epistemic luck real quick? Because that's the first time I've heard that term.
Epistemic luck would be, the situation is, I look at my watch, and my watch says it's 3 a.m. And you ask me, what time is it, Steve? And I say, well, it's 3 a.m. And you say, do you know it? I'm like, yeah, I know it because I'm looking at my watch. So I've met the three conditions for justified true belief, right? I believe that is true. I'm justified because I got a reliable mechanism.
You've got everything. You've got everything epistemologically for your claim. Right. You're fine. Okay. The ontology is separate at this point.
Okay, so the epistemologically, I am there. I met the three conditions, the tripartite thing that I've looked and I've validated. I've justified. I believe it, and it's true. Okay, now I come to find out that watch is broken. It actually is broken at 3 o'clock. So you say, well, Steve, you said you know it. Did I really know it? Well, the justified under JTB, I wouldn't have known it because I was not justified to believe it because
under JTB you wouldn't have known it, but under certain pragmatic philosophies under certain pragmatic epistemologies you actually would have known it.
Under pragmatic theories of knowledge, yes, right? But some of those are not belief first, by the way. But yeah,
mine is. But we've had this conversation,
right? And so, but the thing with the epistemic luck is, it was just by luck that I got it right. Right?
Yeah, this is the whole broken clock right twice a day principle.
But there are theories out there that says that would be fine. Like example, you've heard of fake barn town, right? Remember that? Fake barn town, they're driving through the town that's all fake barns, except for one. And dad turns to the son and says, hey, look, son, there's a barn. Now, all the other barns were fake, right? The town wanted to look like they're bigger than they were. But that one town, the one barn he pointed to was right. Now, there's a causal theory of truth, which is a causal relationship. I'm looking at a tree. I say, hey, look, there's a tree. There's a causal relationship there because I'm looking at the tree. My brain is processing it. There's a causal relationship there. And then you can lead into knowledge.
There's also a problem that just brought up, though. I believe it's called the problem of one in many. Where whenever you're identifying something, the only way you can actually identify it is in how it
in reference to other things.
In reference to other things, but the only way you would know those other things are the thing you're trying to refer to is in reference to other things, and it ends up breaking down almost infinitely. So you have to find a point of stopping. I believe it was called the problem of one in many things.
Sounds familiar. I mean, if you knew that the things were false, the other barns were false, but you see the epistemic luck issue there. It's just by luck that you got it right. So you met the conditions, right? It is true that barn was the real one. You believed it, but were you justified? There's different theories of truth depending on which you want to subscribe, whether you're justified or not. That's the case of the Gettier problems. That's the case would be an epistemic luck. You just were lucky that he got it right.
Yeah, and there's other things that can be like, this is the thing with philosophy. We could actually muddy this problem so many ways. Because we can
bunch
get
of old white guys sitting around talking philosophy.
I'm literally editing a video right now as I'm doing this. But one of the ways you can even muddy this further is appealing to what a concept of a barn actually is, because all of the other barns looked like barns. They were facades of barns. Mm-hmm. So now
what
you could have is pointing to any of those barns actually pointing to a barn. This is and if you're wondering if this is actually a problem, let me ask you a question. If I have a house in a story, am I talking about a house? I could be fabricating the entire thing. Am I talking about a house right now?
There's no way to know what your reference is pointing to.
Exactly. This is like, you can break this problem down so far that it almost sounds like reality doesn't function anymore, which is fun for somebody who's as masochistic as I am to literally jump into the freaking SEP. But
yeah, you really dived into this stuff over the years. I gotta admit, you came from white belt atheism, and you've actually just excelled because you've actually wanted to read about these things, and people have noticed that, by the way. And this is what I'm saying. This is the distinction between somebody who wants to argue babies are atheists, like Bionic Dance, who's never read a paper, never read a book, and claims expertise or some science, or claims that she can make these kind of by fiat stipulations. She actually told a linguist, by the way, she had told a PhD in a linguist that they didn't understand a word like equivocation.
What?
You don't remember that? She told Dr. Jones he didn't know what equivocation meant, and Bob Pastor, who, by the way, isn't a PhD, I don't think, but he definitely has, I think he has a master's degree in linguistics or something like that. But yeah, it was bizarre. Listen to Bionic Dance just argue to people that know way more than she does, thinking she's just by fiat correct, and she doesn't want to be educated on it, and so she hasn't bothered in 5 years to learn anything. You've actually been learning this stuff. I've been trying to learn this stuff. Ocean learns this stuff. And I think that's one of the reasons why people will try to at least listen to us rather than somebody who's out there just saying babies are atheists. They'll get an audience, don't get me wrong. Bionic Dance is a pretty good audience. But would any one of them go to her or her audience to actually learn about a topic? I don't think so.
No, and to be fair, like, Bionic Dance is one of my friends. Like, I know
you're friends with her. Yeah.
Yeah, I do have respect for Kate insofar as we are friends, and I think that she is not malicious in the way that she goes about these things. But even when I did my video on atheism, agnosticism, going in, and I don't think that I left a stone unturned in that video.
You did good. No, you did well. But I saw her comment on it.
Not just a comment. She has a video response to the video.
Yeah.
Telling me that I was wrong.
Oh. And she doesn't know how to address your argument. She doesn't know what you're talking about. That's the problem.
And to be fair, I don't mind her having a video response to me because that doesn't bother me. I don't mind being fact checked. Hell, one of the earliest times I got fact checked, I was fact checked by Aaron Raw in an email and had to put an addendum in a video because Aaron was like, "No, sir, you got this wrong. This thing, like, scientifically was wrong." And I was like, "Oh, okay, hold on. Let me go fix that real quick."
And that's totally fine. But the problem I find is if you have a philosopher telling Aaron he got something wrong, he doesn't care.
Yeah, the problem in philosophy is you can argue any point in any case at all, but you have to be willing to substantiate why you believe that, like why you hold a position.
Not according to him. Matter of fact, he'll go so far to say that even somebody who says gods are bullshit has no onus to give reasons.
That doesn't make any sense to me, though, because for instance, if I didn't need a reason to say, as an example, I had a conversation with what's his name? He's a Calvinist named Eli. I can't remember his last name. but I had a debate with him recently on is there a good reason to believe in God? And I hate having that debate because I think it's boring.
Yeah, me too. Apatheistic right here. That debate's boring to me too.
But I was contacted about whether or not I wanted to have this debate like months in advance by somebody, and I was like, sure, why not? It's not like it's a boring debate, but it's not like it's one I can't have. I'm decently familiar with most points I need to bring into that discussion. And the discussion itself, while I enjoyed it, while I had fun, I had more fun poking holes in the person's philosophy or in his epistemology than I did actually arguing about God.
I agree with you. And those are the discussions I like better, right? I do like the ones that you get to poke holes in each other's things. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with that. If I'm having a discussion, like say I'm talking to Cyrus and I'm running a type of argument, I'm just kind of processing it as I go. And Cyrus points out something as a very valid defeater. And I go, all right, let me back it up. Let me go a different route. Nothing wrong with that. That's great.
This is like me and a friend of mine, who we've been verbal sparring buddies for like 6 years. The only difference is now, I think I've gotten a little better than he has at it because I've been doing the deep dives into philosophy, and so I can actually argue my points better than 6 years ago when I could just argue them better.
Yeah, you've come a
linguistically.
Long way. No offense, you have majorly up your game.
But
you do recognize that, right? That you have. Do you just see the difference?
I felt like an idiot before, and I feel like an idiot
now.
You
know you're
change.
Yeah, no. This is the thing about philosophy, because 7 years ago I was the same way too. I was just as naive. But over 7 years, we learn a lot. But then you realize, we know less now. Probably we have more information and we kind of understand, but realize, oh my God, how little we do know as compared to people that do know their shit. It's ridiculous.
Well, it's like I'll finish my point real quick, and then I'll bring up an example that's pertinent. But in our conversations recently, we were talking about what apparently happened at Oxford, where, according to the information he had, Oxford had banned clapping. And so we started out the conversation under the premise that was true, and I defended the position. We started out with me defending the position of clapping being banned. And after we walked down that route, I then fact checked him and said, okay, and now that we've had the conversation granting your premise, let's also point out that Oxford didn't ban clapping. Like we can start out with the premise is true, have that conversation.
Did they ban it, or did they just add what they
did is they released public documents imploring people on the campus to use other methods of congratulations, like jazz hands or sign language or anything like that, as their default. But if they felt that clapping was pertinent, to go ahead and clap anyway.
Yeah, okay.
Like all they're trying to do is essentially trying to
be more inclusive.
Do like more of an Overton window type shift for social norms.
Yeah.
But there's no actual ban took place. That was the alarmist rhetoric part of that. So it was like we started out with me just going, we're gonna play with that premise, and now we're going to show that the premise wasn't true to begin with. But I want to at least be able to have the argument with my opponent's position being super strong first, and then undermine it afterwards.
You want to steel man him. And by the way, we're gonna have a discussion one of these days about the shifting of the Overton window, and because I think it's been broken, like shattered anymore. It goes all over the place. But anyways, we have the producer, writer, director, and video editor of the wonderful movie Babies Are Atheists, Bad Meme, something or other. I don't remember what the fuck your title was.
Babies Are Atheists is a bad meme.
Yeah, there you go.
I think it's a bad meme.
Is it a meme? By the way, is it a meme though?
It is a meme.
It's a meme. It depends on how you define meme.
If we define so if we
what is table? What is lamp?
If we define meme the way that it was originally coined by Dawkins, then yes, it is a meme.
Yeah, it's a meme.
Well, okay, but the way he uses memes for meme and gene is more of a promulgation of an idea through society. Is that how you're using it? Okay,
that's how I'm using it.
Okay, well then, yeah, it's a meme in that regard, sure. But that's not the colloquial definition when people hear the word meme.
It's not an image
never
macro,
read the selfish gene.
But you have to understand that this. So what's funny though is that if I say that terminology, if I say that statement that I just did, somebody would probably accept what I said. But then if I just replace Dawkins with Huxley, and meme with agnostic, now they'll disagree.
Maybe. Well,
and people will start yelling at you now, sir.
But again, people. It's like Friend of Forever. He reads a lot about memetics and genes versus memes, and he and I have had these talks, and he's like, Steve, you're the only person that seems to even have any understanding of it. And by the way, I haven't read Selfish Gene. I've read excerpts from it, but I've never read the whole book. But I at least familiarize with the topic. I know Ocean has.
He talks about memes in God Delusion as well.
Yeah, but you guys have...
he touches on it. He doesn't go into it as much.
Right.
I haven't read Selfish Gene either, but I've read God Delusion.
But both of you have at least familiarized yourself with the topic. For a lot of people that runs the types of atheists, like babies or atheists, you think they're going to understand that? Do you think they're going to have any exposure to those things? No, they don't have those types of dialogues. This is what I'm saying. I want atheists to be up their game, because when you bring in somebody, no offense, serious, but you bring in somebody like Bionic Dance to a upper level conversation, she'll just sit to say you guys are just being mean, you're just being philosophical snobs and stuff like that. It's like, no, we're trying to have an honest, meaningful conversation that is of importance to somebody. If I wanted to perform a view, right? If I say, look, I really want to promote this particular view I have, I want people to understand the topic to weigh in on it. And if you don't have that ability, then it's just useless.
The philosophical snobbery approach before.
I hate that, though. It's nothing to do with that.
I don't like it either. And one of the things that I wanted to do with the video as well is like, as far as Bionic Dance is concerned, is like a little bit of a hat tip, because like, even though I don't like the idea, I have to credit with the fact that she's been at this a while. She's definitely.
She didn't create it, though. I think you did.
No, I don't think she created it.
I think you gave the impression she did.
It was even said a couple of times in my comment section already. This isn't her. She didn't make this, but because it's been talked about before she even showed up on YouTube. I think that.
But she was a big
like someone said that Flu talked about it or something like that. I'm not familiar with that.
No, it was
Anthony.
But the reason
it's misinterpreted.
There's an 18th century. Hang on, there's an 18th century philosopher. He wasn't even a philosopher, actually. He was an 18th century dude. Start with a K. I can't remember his name. He actually talked about it as well. But this was back in 1700s. If you guys go back to 1700s, by the way, it wasn't even a paper. It was just in a newspaper type. Not a journal, but whatever they used to call those little pamphlets thing that he wrote in. Then you basically don't have really a strong argument. But yeah, she didn't develop that idea clearly. It's been around since the 18th century.
I'm not saying that. I don't think that I say that she did. I think I'm saying like the meme originates from her. I think is the wording that I gave it. And the reason why I bring her up is that in like OG atheist YouTube, she made like 10 videos on this, and she popularized it.
Yeah.
Within like the layman atheist community. So like, because I don't think that a lot of the people that are using the argument now got it from a 17th century paper or article. They're, they got it.
I agree with you. You got
the perpetuation of it being said through Bionic Dance's.
But let me ask you this: would you say that I'm one of the progenitors as far as counter arguments to a lot of these?
Yeah, I mean, whenever anybody brings up the definition of atheism, Steve McRae comes.
My name comes up with it. It's attached to it at this point. I think.
It's like you're synonymous with it, and
fuck that Steve guy.
Kind of funny,
and that's a good and bad thing, though. I think.
Yeah, it is.
No, I think this is why when
jazz hands, applause.
I think like on the good side, it is always nice to have an idea. Not an idea credited to you, but the formation of an idea credited to you. That's always nice. Unfortunately, though, if there comes a time where there's any stigma related to your name, then which you and I can agree that there is, at least in some form, then we get to this weird set where yes, it is true that you are one of the people who pushes this idea more than others, but because of that, there are people that will reject it merely because it is you who've done it.
Ocean was very blunt about that.
As soon as they, because like Steve and I talked about this a little bit beforehand, and I was just like, dude, your name coming up, people are just going to reject it out of hand because it's Steve McRae.
I'm very well aware of that. I can't fault people for that. I really don't. But for example, like I have had, even though it's derivative, all ideas are, but I had, I have a very novel burden of proof, legit argument that I've had. I mean, logically validated about lack of belief being a second order belief requiring a burden of justification to hold as a rational position. Now, it's not like it's a fantastic out of the ordinary type of thing that's so far removed from philosophy, but it was predicated on actual paper that Dr. Malik wrote that he and I actually spoke on it, and he really liked the way that I approached his view, and then took it and ran with it to a new novel approach. You don't see a lot of novel ideas. You don't see a lot of novelty in these types of discussions. But let me ask you this, Ocean. I really like the term easy lack of beliefism. Has anybody used that before? Because
I haven't heard that.
Okay, because you have easy believism
that's
for theism.
This would be the first time that I've come across that.
All right, I want to coin something.
Even easy believism is something that I haven't encountered very often.
It's rare.
I seem like it rings a bell. Like I think I might have heard somebody like Jimmy Stevens say it at one point, but it's one of those things.
Calvin
Jimmy
stuff.
Stevens would also. This is okay. I could see Calvinists throwing out like it. So with conversation with Jimmy Stevens, often he would just like throw out like 6 terms, and I would not know what they meant, and it also wouldn't matter because I'd still understand what his point was. But he'd use a lot of jargon to get there.
I gotta tell you, he used some jargon that I years ago. That I actually I was like, I don't know what this means, but I went to go look it up, and
still happens to me.
I learned it from him. I really did.
I don't know, like I think I heard him talking about a subject within the past year, where the points that he was bringing up were things that I just like it. I was wondering if I hadn't considered those points because they didn't matter to me or because I wasn't well versed, and I wasn't quite sure which one it was.
Right.
Because once I kind of figured out the kind of things that he was saying, I was like, why would even why am I even traveling down this road?
But Jimmy Stevens is not the kind of guy you go, oh, he's just talking out of his ass.
No.
Right?
That's not.
We understand.
I think it's like just by consequence of him being a monotheist and looking at religion a certain way. Because as a polytheist, I'm looking at religion like and God belief and all those kind of propositions just completely differently than he does. But by consequence of being a monotheist and holding to certain ideas about God, it kind of leads you around like different avenues in philosophy that polytheists just don't go there because it's not a consequence of holding our position. So, and then it's because that's what my large experience is with, especially presuppositionalism. Polytheism, presuppositionalism just doesn't come up. Like it doesn't make any sense. But would
you agree though? If we can get people to be at the level where they recognize somebody who, like Jimmy Stevens, who isn't talking out of his ass, who's a theist, as opposed to somebody like Tom Jump, who is talking as his ass, even though he's an atheist. Let me think of like Darn's deity. Clearly, Darn deity talks out of his ass. So we can get people to recognize the distinction between somebody who really does know.
Darwin's deity straddles the line of talking out of his ass and
very well actually, because he gets things right every so often.
Yeah. Because he'll talk about like what is it, Greg Bonson?
Yeah.
What's the name?
Greg Bonson.
Yeah. That's the guy he keeps like quoting all the time.
He parrots Greg Bonson verbatim,
but doesn't give him any credit. He doesn't say he's doing it. He just
and he doesn't
says the same thing Greg Bonson said in his monologues
verbatim.
Right.
It's like you're freaking. This is not to bring this particular topic up because it's a yikesy one, but this is like the 1488ers that won't actually say where they're getting their dialogue from.
It's not as bad as that though.
I know it's not as bad as that, but that's the first thing that came to mind.
Wait, what's 1488ers? I don't know what these things.
Sirs, do you want to explain?
Is this like a Hitler
1488 to Steve?
Actually, it's exactly what it. Okay, so you know what the 14 words are?
Yeah. Okay, I thought let's go. Okay, this is a Nazi.
It's that.
Okay.
Yeah,
it's
I thought so, but I wasn't sure. Yeah.
Yeah, 1488 is a way to say the 14 words without saying the 14 words.
Gotcha. Okay. I vaguely recall that now.
Yeah.
Three white guys sitting around talking about 1488. This is not going to be a monetized video.
Oh boy.
Jeez. Oh boy.
Yeah, what can go wrong with that, right?
But no,
we got a Jew, a polytheist, and whatever the hell this week Sirs identifies as.
What DD does is he straddles that line between like saying the like saying stuff from Greg Bonson and talking out of his ass, but he's really good at driving in the conversation, getting in that driver's seat and staying there. And you have to have certain conversation skills in order to get him out. And that was one of the things that I noticed about Tom Jump. That I was surprised that I actually thought he would do better at that than he did. I've seen him really like stonewall a conversation before. I figured he would be able to do it fairly well with DD, at least be able to get more than the sentences that he got in. You know what I mean? Because what wound up happening was that Tom Jump didn't say much at all in that conversation.
No, like it was. Correct me if I'm wrong, and I don't know if were here when I said it, but Did T jump get more than 2, maybe maximum 3 contiguous sentences out at any time? Matter of fact, did he get past 6 words
in a row?
In a row before Darwin said
in a row, I'd say max 3 or 4 sentences.
And max. And how many times was that? Once?
There was a couple times that Darwin's deity let him talk. Like there was one point where it was towards the end where Tom Jump was able to get out like a coherent thought. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't very long before, Tom then jumped in again and was like, or not Tom, but then Darwin's deity started jumping back into the conversation and then continued to railroad him throughout the rest of the conversation.
Well, that's because the way that you deal with somebody with a script, and we can all agree that T Jump has a script.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But so does DD.
Yes, but the way
that's why I was like, that's why because it was like this. They won't get anywhere.
The way you effectively deal with somebody with a script is you get them off script, and I'm 100% certain that DD has been descripted more often than T Jump and is therefore more experienced. He's much more as much as I hate him, he is more experienced with getting back on track. T Jump is used to being able to work with his script. This is a lot like the differences between early Kent Hovind and later Kent Hovind, where early Kent Hovind is all script, all slides, and later Kent Hovind is that, but also a lot more ignoring of what the opponent just said so that he can maintain his script.
Yeah, he doesn't care any longer. He doesn't even put forth an effort.
Yeah, and that difference is there because he knows, at least on some level, that he's got a script and he's got to stick to it to sound even mildly convincing. So it's not engaging with his interlocutor is actually disadvantageous to him.
Yeah, I wasn't surprised as Ocean was that T Jump wasn't going to do very well. Matter of fact, I could safely say that I was arguing, or I was hoping that he would lose, and he did. I was actually voting for DD.
I have no love for DD, none whatsoever.
No, I know
and
that.
I
know.
I don't particularly like T Jump, but I don't particularly hate him either. I don't mind atheists that argue as badly as he does.
Well, that's right. That's terrible. I told you my conspiracy theory, right?
James, yes, and I agree with you. I think James has picked him.
Yes,
but
I've got you, James. You're dead to rights, man. I got you dead to rights.
I wouldn't be surprised if that's what's going on. But when I went into it, I was because I heard it was going on, and I went in and I saw DD was just yelling, and it seemed like DD had gotten to the point that he usually gets with people after about 20 minutes of conversation. I was like, how long has this been going on? And it's like less than 5 minutes. I'm like, oh shit, we're in for a ride.
The first minute I was like, oh my God, I'm done. The first minute it was bad.
Yeah, I don't know how it started because when I came in, it was extremely escalated. Did Tom say something?
DD just jumped into it. He asked a question and Tom just put some bullshit about reality. And it never progressed from there because
saying that reality exists by definition was
stupid,
weird.
Yeah, because he's like, how do you know reality is real? Now, I explained to people before
by appealing to a tautology. Apparently,
he was just saying
definitionally.
Yeah, but that's not
tautologically. Yes.
How is that an answer? That's a non-answer.
It's not. But you did it.
I would have gone. And DD knows this. I've done this with DD, and I have had this discussion. There are arguments against foundationalism. People know this, right? Especially from an externalist point of view. You could run a good script against classical foundationalism. It's hard. But I would explain to him, look, I accept reality as a properly basic belief, irrationally. I'm okay with that. And of course, and DD has, gone and ran with that. He's fine to do so, right? That's a good discussion. But Tom Jump didn't even have a foundation to start with. He didn't even have an answer to the question. He basically was saying reality is real because it's real.
So there's a couple of things thinking about like their strategies. I guess it should be less surprising now because what DD's strategy is to ask the atheist a ton of questions and get them to the point where they're saying that they can't know things from their final authority, right? That's his strategy. That's
his goal, to get you the atheist is their own God.
What T Jump's strategy is to take the opponent's position and mirror it with naturalistic pantheism, and get to a point of like equality of positions or something like that. It's the point of that is not necessarily clear to me, but it's what he does.
Okay.
So I can see how somebody who's not interested, like, because Didi doesn't like talking about his own position.
Never.
He'll talk about it like a little bit, but
then he moves on fast.
Someone starts trying to dig into it, that's when he starts to get on the offensive and try to get more aggressive. Tom Jump's a very defensive debater. He wants to try and just compare his position to yours as much as possible, but that doesn't work with DD. DD is going to just appeal to revelatory and do that over and over, and Tom doesn't necessarily have an answer to that.
Well, that's why
other than to say it's not true and just assert it, and so it doesn't. So the debate went. I guess I should have predicted it going about where it was, but because it makes sense, right? But if you thought I had faith that Tom would be able to handle that. I did, because I thought that there would be a lot of way more back and forth than there was, but there wasn't.
No, there was no back and forth.
It was just him being yelled at.
It was both of them yelling at each other, both of them being defensive. You had two defensive debaters trying to go have at it. It wasn't going nowhere. But when Didi asks a legit question, because he can ask some legit questions, and Tom Jump doesn't understand. For example, like they're talking about, and they just touched on it. I don't think they got very deep, but I'm going to use it as a reference because Didi likes this topic. He talks about the uniformity of nature, right? Hume's problem of induction, and he explains to atheists, and he does a good job on it. He actually gets this right. Darwin explains that the problem of induction is the fact that we cannot epistemically justify the use of induction because it's circular, because you can't use induction to justify the use of induction. You can't use prior experience to justify induction because that's circular, because you're using inductive reasoning to justify induction. And so you can't say that the uniform of nature is going to hold by induction. Okay, the atheist at that point should just go, you're absolutely right. I don't do that, and I think it's unjustifiable. But then you have people like Aaron Ra. No, he will argue, oh, it is justifiable because we use it, which is not what the problem is. He actually thinks that the Hume's problem induction is that I'm trying to think of the way he words it. He doesn't think it's an epistemic justification. He thinks that the Hume's problem induction is that we can't be for sure that the uniformity of nature is going to continue, which is not what the problem is at all. It's just that we cannot justify using it because it's circular to do so by saying, how are we going to know that the laws of physics are going to be the same tomorrow? We can't know. We don't know. We assume. We do it as a properly basic belief, as a blind faith condition even. Well, faith.
Wait, is Aaron Ross saying it's anything other than an assumption?
Yeah, he actually says we can use induction because it's worked in the past, which is begging the question.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he thinks the problem of induction is basically.
Why would he do that?
Because that's what he understands it before. I've had that conversation with him, and so have other people. That he thinks the problem of induction is just basically we can't be certain that the laws of logic and the uniform of nature will hold, but that's not what it is. It's about are we justified to be able to justify use of the laws of logic and the uniform of nature? No, they're unjustifiable, and that's fine. There's a paper I read recently that tries to do it in a pragmatic way, but it's very, very complicated. But for the most part, Hume's problem of induction is just you cannot epistemically justify the use of induction via fast inferences because that's begging the question of using inductive reasoning to justify induction.
Circular logic works because circular logic works, though.
Because that's circular. Yeah, circularity.
Yeah, it works because it's circular, because it's circular, because it's circular.
Yeah, ring circularity or vicious circular? Or virtuous? Virtuous?
Yes.
Virtuous? Okay, Sai. There is something called ring circularity that actually isn't always fallacious. Premise circularity is always a fallacy. That's where you have some kind of actual begging the question premise that it's going to be circular in your argument. But ring circularity, rule circularity is more nuanced, and I can't give an example. I'll have to find an example of
you have to send me one.
Yeah,
I'm interested in that. I want to see what you're talking about.
Darwin's Greatest Hits actually has an example of rule circularity, but I didn't memorize it. But rule circularity is inside the arguments itself.
We're judging you now.
There's a rule that you can use that makes it circular, but it's not premise circular. It's not saying I can formulate a conclusion from a single premise, which would be begging the question, which is circular. Don't ask me to remember this shit.
Send me an example, because
I'll find that video by Darwin's Greatest Hits.
Yeah, please do. That'll work.
It's premise circularity versus rule.
Darwin's Greatest Hits it's got a bunch of good content. Like if you guys haven't checked out that channel, you should definitely look at it because it's like
he's smart.
Number one, if T Jump just to know T-Jump did not do any research on his opponent, because if he did, he would have found that channel and he would have come in prepared. Because the only thing that you need to do in order to have like prep for a Darwin's deity conversation, just watch the videos on that channel.
Mm-hmm. You're on that videos. I'm in some of those
there's
videos.
examples of me talking to him on that
and
channel.
Me. Mm-hmm.
Like if you want to see like how to handle like the aggression aspect of it, there's conversations where I do that, where it's like, because he gets really aggressive and you have to interject, you have to knock him over in order to carry on anything.
There's a video, I can't remember the name of it, but the very first scene is me telling people, with Darn's there, I'm like, hey, Darn's deity, he has what's called a troll list of people that have asked legitimate questions, 18 of them.
Yeah, the questions
that he refuses to answer. And I say, you know, I want him to answer those questions. Well, I'll talk to him about it. I haven't said if he comes into my room, I will have a conversation with him. Okay, so it's not like anybody's scared to have a conversation with him, but he refuses to have a conversation because if he answers any of those questions, he's screwed because people have evidence that he's argued both sides of out of his mouth, kind of thing. So I was telling people about this one time.
Or worse, they're questions that aren't tenable with the positions that he holds.
Right, exactly. And so I was telling people about this, and so Darwin's Greatest Hits took that and he made a compilation of Darwin's deity doing exactly that in multiple hangouts, and it ends with Gus Bellinger just
ripping him apart,
verbally lacerating him to death.
Yeah,
it was the most If you don't know who, not you guys, but the audience, if you've never heard of Gus Bellinger, if you have wanted to see a verbal rapage to the point where it should have been almost criminal, Gus is your guy.
Gus is very good at finding he doesn't even like. A lot of people want to like destroy somebody intellectually, philosophically, or whatever the fuck. Gus cuts through all of that. Gus will get through to a personality issue that is, and with Darwin's deity, it's a personality issue. Like his position in philosophy and whatever the fuck, you can talk about all of that all day and talk about the problems with it. But when it comes right down to it, you can have another person that holds a lot of the same positions as Darwin's deity and be so much less infuriating of a human. But with him, it's a personality issue. And absolutely. Gus highlights that.
Yeah.
He's able to find that issue, articulate it, and then bury you with it. And
do you remember the name of the
watching him do it. It's just Questions, a compilation on the DGH channel.
Questions compilation? Is that what it's called?
Compilation, yeah. I think that I've shared it with people a bunch of times.
Darwin's Greatest Hits channel
is on the thumbnail.
Yeah, Skylar Hicks, if I remember correctly, is on the thumbnail. So go check out Darwin's Greatest Hits channel and find that video, Questions Compilations or something. It's pretty old. 4 years maybe, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a really old video.
Yeah, but it's so good.
Back in the days when like people were still using Hangouts to communicate with each other and these things. Like it was when Nadia's Room was like still a thing.
Kawasa says, "Make philosophy great again." Impeach T-Jump.
Impeach T-Jump.
Sorry, I thought.
Wow, you only changed one letter.
Right?
Oh my God, that's funny.
I don't think that's his real name. But I thought somebody said there was.
No, his name's. He doesn't have T-Jump written in his. Like his last name's not Jump.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
Daniel, I thought Daniel says I'm a professional philosopher. I think he was just kidding though. Because I wanted to know if he was actually a professional philosopher. I always like to be fact checked, right? This is one thing about Ocean knows about me. If I fuck up philosophy, I want to be corrected by the experts, and I'll be like, oh shit, I won't make that mistake again. And I learned that way. And people have run that narrative for years. Steve doesn't accept criticism. No, I don't accept criticism from dumb people, right? But smart people
accept criticism. It's occasionally it just has to be yelled at you.
Yeah, that's fine.
But
fuck off. No, I'll accept criticism from dumb people if they're right. But it's the likelihood of a person who tells me I'm wrong.
I know that you accept criticism because we've gotten into we started out getting into arguments with each other constantly.
You were a polytheist. You were an idiot.
Wait, yeah, Ocean. Why are all of your friends, and for that matter, all of my friends, just people that I've argued with on the internet? And then here we are.
It's like, look at that. I think we met. Cyrus and I met having an argument with each other.
And then you guys started a podcast.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, but see, like, Ocean and I, we started in like Nadia's room. That was the thing. You literally sat there and argued with people. The next day, it started all over again. You forgot about it.
Just rinse, repeat.
Nobody
gave
a shit.
Exactly. Yeah. We would be, an asshole to each other every once in a while. And then the next day it was like, oh, it's Steve. It's like, That was fine.
Nobody held grudges. Nobody cared. Nobody took it personally.
No, people did hold grudges. It's just that if you were regular in the community, it didn't work if you held grudges because people would give you shit for it.
The people that we held grudges for were the Brett Keens.
Yeah, people or Darwin's deity, people that would like consistently ruin the dynamic.
Right.
You know, was.
Watch is just noticing Cirrus is here. Yeah, Cirrus, he pops by. Cirrus has got his channel's blowing the fuck up, man. He's got like 20,000 million subs or some shit like now.
It's actually been
1,000 million.
Yeah,
that's a bigger number than I have. It's actually been stagnating a little bit lately, and that's because I've been.
Go watch Cirrus's channel, guys.
I've also been doing some videos in there that aren't really like great for the algorithm. Like I did one that was the epistemology of Darth Plagueis. Which, like, even though I find the epistemology of a fictional character very interesting, like delving into, hey, why did he act the way he did? Is there a philosophical principle that he was adhering to, even if he didn't name it in the book? There is, as it turns out for his, it was psychological egoism. And I enjoy doing a deep dive into a character like that. Like, there's a lot of people who were fans of Undertale who said that, oh, Sans is a nihilist. And I went, hold on, let me do that. Let me look into that. No, actually, that character's philosophy is not nihilism. It's fatalism. It just happens to look a lot like nihilism.
Well, we had Unsettled History come on the Great Debate channel, and they did a deep dive on Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, which was freaking fascinating. I was like, this was brilliant. I never even thought about some of the stuff they brought up. It was so good. Things I never even knew about.
But unfortunately, like the Darth Plagueis video, if I do a debunk on PragerU, they say something stupid in a 5-minute video, and I go through, like, fact check everything they say and go, okay, you got this wrong, this wrong, this wrong. That video is more boring for me to make, but that video gets 30,000 views.
Oh, okay.
I do.
Okay. Wait, let me explain. Okay, let me ask you this. Okay, I get messages all the time, and I would say, again, 95%, just 95% like what's going on in the channel. Now, they realize that we're waiting for non sequiturs, so they know there's stuff going on. I get it. But in the interim, we're having, like Caffeine Corner, which I happen to enjoy doing. Cheshire enjoys doing. We get 3,000 to 4,000, 6,000 views. You know, not like they had a non sequitur, but, you know, decent for my size channel. And then I have the one or two people going, this is just drama. We want the science stuff. I'm like, okay, you know, I get that. You know, I can't please everybody, so I want to have like a mixture. So I had Astro Athens on, who's an international model. I had Dr. Kroon on, who's an astrophysicist, and one of the greatest mathematicians of our day, Landon Curtin-O, on, and that got like 800 views.
That's pretty normal. Like, hey, I can actually do it right now. If I look at my video analytics right now, because I was actually going over these yesterday. Let's see here. If I do, let's see. So if I do a video talking about PragerU, that was one. That one of them got 18,000 views. The other got 30,000 views. But if I do one that I think is really interesting, which is going over how the God of the Bible is a yandere, like literally just having fun, taking passages from the Bible and comparing them to the standard stereotypical, like, I'm going to murder everybody who's trying to go after my boyfriend, anime schoolgirl. I thought that was a fun video to do. It was really fun to play with. But 8,000 views, a fraction of what
I've noticed something a little bit similar with what people say they want me to do versus what they'll watch. That if I make videos about, you know, that there's, if I'm going after like a personality or something like that, like if I went after the Federalist or the Pumpkin Saga or some of those like videos where I've gone after people watch the shit out of those, and then they say, why don't you do more content about paganism? I did a video about a ritual that was done at a
the one that was done at the council.
Right, breaking it down, talking about the elements of it and why different parts of it, you know, were part of the ritual and everything like that. Did that whole thing. It is one of the lowest viewed videos I've ever done.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. People, you just do what you like and let people decide.
Right. It's like I'm doing the thing, and you know, I did that video because I wanted to, and I'm going to continue doing stuff that is about that kind of stuff because I want to. But it is the thing that people repeatedly say, we want you to do more of that stuff. And then they don't watch it when I do it.
Hell, I had the and
it might be YouTube throttling me. I don't know, but
if you're familiar,
keeping it down.
If you're familiar with Jonathan Sheffield, he's a Anglican debater.
Yes.
So Jonathan Sheffield did granted it was for his channel, but he premiered it on my channel first. A fully animated video, like fully 21 minutes of full animation. That's a lot of fucking work. going into a deep dive comedically over the different versions of the Bible and how they've come to be, and where a lot of the newer versions that are being printed every couple of years are coming from, a lot of the history behind that. And I thought the video was fascinating. A lot of people in the comments said that some of the stuff went over their head, because when you deep dive, that happens sometimes. But aside from that, it's a fully animated video. It was really, really engaging. 4,000 views.
Yeah, well, the videos that I do,
I'm a 25,000 sub channel. 4,000 views.
When the videos that I do, they're standalones.
4,000 views is huge for me.
They don't break 1,000. Yeah, but like Caffeine Corner, we got 6,000. But then I do like a non sequitur show video, 30,000.
Yeah.
Okay. And they're like, oh, we don't want to talk about drama. We don't want to talk about that. 30,000 I'll get for the non sequitur show video. 6,000, 8,000, 10,000, 15,000, 18,000 on some of them.
The analytics say that y'all are lying.
Yeah, I don't trust you people. But Cyrus, you're being called out here. Philosopher called you out. He says for 5,001. I do admit Gene Kim was a bit low-hanging fruit, Cyrus.
So it's even worse than that. He's actually
agreeing with you,
Ross. Cyrus is just like, no, just wait till I tell you my own opinion about my
You
show.
have no idea how bad low-hanging fruit was.
So not only is it low-hanging fruit, I can both justify and not justify me tackling Gene Kim. The justification for it is, as much as I hate going after low-hanging fruit, on the logical side of things, low-hanging fruit, unfortunately, are where a lot of people pull their opinions from. Because most people want quick, snappy, intuitive answers, and unfortunately, that is what you get from low-hanging fruit.
You ain't kidding.
So that's where you're going to end up getting a lot of your information from. I say this as somebody who has parents who literally have a family picture of them at Ken Ham's Ark. So bear in mind, I live with this. So
we had this conversation about the NIFB stuff, I think, at one point, where it's like it is justified to make a wealth of content responding to NIFB stuff, because even though they're not saying anything very rigorous, right? But they have a ton of people. But
they're the people who are getting the numbers. They're the people who are convincing people.
But Sarah, back in the day, like
I got kicked out of a NIFB members chat recently.
Back in the day, the version of that was the Westboro Church. You talk about the Westboro Baptist Church, you'd get views.
Yeah, but the difference with the Westboro Baptist Church and the NIFB is the Westboro Baptist Church is loud, but they are incredibly tiny. The NIFB are loud and not tiny, because they've managed to move into multiple countries.
Right, I agree with that.
Because they have started a franchise tradition.
So the other,
come be homophobic bigots with us. Join our group. Yeah.
Dude, not even kidding. That's what they do.
Yeah, no.
So
it is. They do it's a franchise approach.
Franchise bigotry. That's beautiful.
Bigotry. Yeah.
But on the other hand, on the side where I can't justify, like I can justify the side of the conversation that says, well, look, YouTube is my full-time job, so I will do the videos that are more rigorous. Like the Darth Blagus video was a week of just editing. That wasn't counting rereading the book more than once, so I could do this. Like
I got a little bit of venting from Cyrus when he was doing that. He was just like, "This video."
Yeah, but so not only like I will still do those videos, but I also have to do the videos that I know are going to keep a roof over my head, and unfortunately, they are tackling people like Gene Kim. Now, I said that it's worse than it sounds. Here's why. So halfway through the recording process of the Gene Kim video, I started to realize something. I've heard him say this shit before. Where have I heard it before? After I finished editing, producing, and sent the video out to patrons, video was done. I said, okay, I need to get my tags for the video. Let me go ahead and search in my back catalog of videos I've done on Gene Kim to get my tags for this video. And that's where I found where I've heard his arguments before. I've responded to this exact video last year. The exact ones. Now, granted, I made different points this time because I think I've gotten better at art.
You don't remember?
I made some of the points were the same, but I've also learned more since then, so I can better articulate positions now.
That might be
nothing wrong with that. You just revisited it, though.
But on the other,
but it is funny. Usually you pick a different video.
How do you remember though? I mean, I have 1,000 videos. I mean, you can't remember all the shit you've done.
No, impossible. I'm sitting at about 400 now. I cannot remember anything.
I'm still like 27.
Give it time, Ocean. Give it time.
You know, you've been around forever. You just started kind of doing your whole videos.
Yeah. I just started doing videos on YouTube, but I have been around forever. I have 32 videos.
Would we be considered OG?
Would me and you?
Yeah.
I think I was around for a little bit before
you were around a little bit for but I mean, all practical purposes. I mean,
I think that OG. It depends on how you define OG. So if you're looking at OG from like in the debate community that we're from, then yes. Okay. If you're looking at OG atheist YouTube, then I'd say that my standards on that would be people like Don Exodus, Thunderfoot, Concordance.
Yeah, to us, those are OG. Yeah,
and those kind of people.
I agree with you that. Yeah,
the OGs. So,
like my OGs were
Venom Fang X,
Venom Bites, and and Bottom. Remember Bottom Bites for that guy, Thunderfoot. Really, the living dinosaur, right? Yeah, those are my big ones, and of course, don't forget Shock of God.
Shock of God, he's still around apparently.
He still makes videos very frequently.
Yeah, riding around on his motorcycle. Does he still do the motorcycle?
How do you know that atheism is true and
true and correct?
Correct. How do you know that?
Yeah.
That sounds like an incoherent statement since it's a negation.
It's Shock of God, dude. The only one that was Venom Fang X. Now that guy was just straight up, I think, just dishonest as fuck. But
Venom Fang X really wanted to be Eric Hovind.
He was a little,
why?
Last I heard from him, he was working with Ray Comfort and Eric Hovind.
I thought that. I heard that too. Yeah, I think they did something together, but I'm trying to think what it was because he went to college and then it
was the Genesis thing.
Was it?
It was a CG adventure that was being produced in Pensacola, Florida.
Genesis the movie?
Yeah. They crowdfunded it.
Wouldn't it be interesting if Venom Fang X went to college and then came out an atheist and just had to make a video about that? Just came out and would look.
He was a creationist that dressed up as Batman. I don't know if he's.
Hey, Batman went to college.
But yeah, but okay. There's the funny thing is. Steve, and you'll fucking flip when you realize this because I just did and I flipped. There are two creationists that dress up as Batman.
Yeah,
there's Venom Fang X and Christian Hillbilly.
Pops.
Christian Hillbilly,
he's also known as Pops. Christian Hillbilly.
Yeah.
And by the way, who turned out to be a real sleazeball.
Yeah. But
people don't if they don't remember Christian Hillbilly, they are missing out because he was really a dirtbag, like straight up. Piece of shit. This guy, I don't know if you remember Cirrus, but this guy, by the way, they mentioned
someone's pointing out that Brett Keane is OG, and they're actually right.
Yeah, Brett Keane is OG, but I would say the Christian Hillbilly was in some ways was worse, because this guy actually told he was a bus driver, and for I think it was elementary school. I think it was elementary.
I don't know what level of school that it was, but I do remember he was like. He said something particularly concerning to a young girl.
Yeah, the young girl that confided him about sexual molestation, and he basically told her that was the will of God and to
pray about it.
The perpetrator was just acting on his own volition and will that God gave him and it was
the worst part about that though is that that's legitimately how we were taught to view that.
He's consistent. He was internally consistent. I thought but he was internally consistent piece of shit.
I recognize that because I recognize a younger version of myself.
Special needs
making that argument.
Yeah.
I've made that argument as a Christian before. That exact one to a friend.
You used to be a piece of shit.
So no, that argument sounds very familiar to me.
Wow,
not
that's harsh,
for good reasons.
Yeah, that's harsh. But don't you feel like because you've got away from all that stuff, you've just become so much of a better person?
I would hope so.
Yeah, right. Somebody had mentioned Pothole 54. By the way, I got a chance to talk to Pothole 54 ages ago. He was supposed to have a debate with Steven Crowder, and that fell through. And so,
what was their topic on?
Climate change. And that fell through. And so, DPR Jones was just taking call-ins, and I got in. Although DPR said, "Well, yeah, I know him, but if I had known, because I guess he didn't want people that he knew because it was so favoritism." But I got in, and I got to spend a good 10-15 minutes talking to Potholer on climate change. It was fascinating, but the problem is that video is no longer available, and it sucks. So I have no proof of it, but I got to have some serious conversation with him. It was awesome. The dude is incredible.
Steven Crowder to me is like the very definition of intuition versus logic. Everything he says sounds intuitive. Like you hear it, you're just like, "Yep, that's reasonable," and then you scrutinize it for like half a second, and you're like, "Wait, no, it's not."
Oh, it's all emotionally based. But I've listened to Crowder a few times, and you're right. I'll be going, wow, okay, let me think about this, because he's very good at having talks with people. But
he's a good orator.
He's a good orator.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean he has good arguments.
No, as soon as he
right.
I originally I didn't want to tackle Crowder on my channel because I was like, yeah, that doesn't sound my style. And then like as I listened to him, I'm like, no, this is right up my alley. I can dismantle this pretty soundedly.
Yeah. Hannah says, remember, who can forget Wildwood Claire? I remember Wildwood Claire. She was a PhD in geology that basically shat all over Nephilim Free. Yeah. Who, by the way, is still around. And by the way, yes, it was me that got Nephilim Free back on the air.
Yeah, I had to.
Wait, that was you?
Yeah, that was Steve. Steve was the one that taught Nephilim Free how to use Hangouts and everything after they stopped working for him. He wasn't able to function.
I begged the community for forgiveness multiple times on that.
Yeah, you're the reason why there is a debate on my channel of me versus Nephilim Free. You're the reason that happened.
Was that with the? Did you have who
It was an 8-person debate.
Yeah, but that was with Jackson Wheat, RJ. Were they in that? And Standing for Truth?
Yes.
Okay.
That debate.
Okay. Didn't know anything about it. No, I'm just kidding.
I saw this one.
I didn't know what he's talking about. Trust me.
Oh my god.
Sorry, y'all.
That's such a cast. I don't.
Now think about this, though. Think about this, though. RJ's brilliant in biology, right? We all agree that he can shit on any creationist. I think he's horrible at philosophy, and I've told him that. I'm like, I even told him stay in your lane, kind of thing.
I've had the same experience with him, from what I've seen him. I've interacted with him like a couple of times, and I was just like, whenever he was talking about biology, I was like, oh, listen.
Yeah. No, I mean, he
but then when he would start talking about anything else, I'd just be like, can you shut up?
Right.
But,
so he's very myopic in his field of expertise, and I'll give him expertise in creationism. He's just the walking cyclopedia.
It's like,
but hang on one second.
Similar to my opinion about Aaron Ra. Aaron Ra, I love him when he's talking about phylogeny.
Yeah.
Like when he's talking about biology and evolution, and when he's battling against creationists, the man is in his fucking element, and he's great at it.
Right. I love foundation of falsehoods.
Then he gets into philosophy, and I'm like, Aaron, don't go there. Just stay back.
The foundational falsehoods of creationism is a brilliant series of books. It's great. It's brilliant. It really was. But here's the thing. Imagine having RJ, Standing for Truth, and Nephilim, 3 people that won't shut the fuck up trying to have a conversation.
Yeah.
Let that sink in.
And then Cyrus is in the room.
And then you've got like people like me and Brass, who, even though me and Brass disagree on like about 60% of things, I want to say me and Brass disagree on.
It's probably about accurate to me too.
Me too. Yeah.
It's about 60%.
Sure.
But me and Brass are both like really polite in conversation, where we're just like, okay, I'm going to let you speak. I'm going to let you do your thing.
Brass is the troll that you know, right? Brass is the troll that
you know.
Right.
Brass is so I'm friends with Brass on Facebook.
Yeah, me too.
And when he posts, every single time I have to remind myself that Poe's Law exists.
No, he actually believes it, but I gotta give Mr. Brass
Is he
props.
saying he's a Poe, or
no? He's not a Poe.
No,
he believes it.
He's not a Poe, but he has a lot of his positions, especially politically, are incredibly horribly founded, and the way that he frames the way that he frames things. Yeah, the way that he frames things. It makes sense when you read it, and then you think about it for a second. You're like, no, that's a really stupid thing to say.
Yeah, he has said some bad arguments before, even on Twitter. I'm not politically correct, but he takes it to.
I think we mutually blocked each other over something that he did. I think it was. I remember what it was. He said some yikesy stuff.
He could say some dicey stuff. Yeah.
It was like, oh no.
He's
no, too far, Brass.
Yeah, that's why I just like, I'll back away a little bit. I'm like, I can't help you with this one, brother.
Right.
You're on your own.
Yeah, I think he was making jokes about depression and shit like that.
Yeah.
Just like, no, dude. No, dude.
And the thing is, I believe in that Twitter stream, didn't he hide behind the fact that he's a troll for part of it? And just like that, no, you can't.
Yeah, I was like, that makes it worse, dude.
Yeah.
Like that means that you tackled a situation that requires a certain type of brevity, and you decided not to give it the brevity it was due and hide behind a label. Oh, hold on a second. I can actually think of something very similar to this. It's like hiding behind the label of atheist and not giving philosophy the brevity it's due. Oops.
Ah, there you go. Yeah.
Shit.
So, out of curiosity, why is it that Ocean's video has 91 likes and only 2 dislikes? I have sitting at I just had it. I have 72 likes and 20 dislikes, and I'm agreeing with the motherfucker. What's wrong? I don't get it.
Your clickbait was too effective.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah,
I just I have like
I noticed that you had a bunch of dislikes before you went live.
Yeah,
and I was like, people think he's gonna actually go, because I reached out to you when I'll tell you all a story. When I first saw that video title, I reached out to Steve and I was like,
he did.
Dude, did I fuck up on something, or what did you like? Because I thought this was going to be cool.
Like, I didn't play you though. Now did I? I told you. No, it's
you should have said back. Yeah, I'm going to destroy you, motherfucker.
That said, I do have to hop out, but it has been fun hopping in here.
Yeah, we're going to be done here in a few minutes, but I
got some things to take care of as well.
But it was funny because at least Ocean was like, "Holy shit, what the hell did I get wrong?" He was really worried.
Right. No, I reached out to be like, so is there a thing? Like, what did I, because I was like, if there's a thing, I want to know what it is, because Steve bringing it up is going to be like, well, maybe I did fuck up somewhere. What was it? And
God,
then
funny.
You sent back, no, you're just
I wasn't going to mess with you, dude. I'm not like that. I'm allowed a little clickbaity every so often, because like the fact that, like I said, you mentioned Bionic Dance, but not even me. Okay, whatever. Consider this
Bionic Dance is the genesis of the meme, man. You gotta give her credit.
But I'm the one that's fighting against her for the last couple of years on that stupid meme.
That's true.
Yeah, and I'm the one that's
as I told you, and as you mentioned
I lost 6 Facebook friends.
I put your name on that video. I put your name on that video, and it's gonna like yeah, reach out to Steve. Here's something you gave. As soon as that happens, it's going to be like, oh, he's listening to Steve. He's just taking Steve's side.
You're on my channel, you idiot. People are going to know.
Well, yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter that I am taking your side on it, because I've even said to people, like, in other conversations, like, yeah, no, I agree with Steve on this issue.
I had 6 people block me on Facebook because they're like, literally on this issue in the last couple of days, they're like, if you can't figure out that babies are atheists, you're an idiot.
You've been arguing this issue. Like, and I've told you this before. Your way of dealing with this issue is to fire on all pistons in all directions, and you don't put it down. You've never done it. You've never been like, yeah, you know what?
It gets worse. I can do worse.
Feel free to hold the position you want to. I tried to approach it in a way that's a little bit more even-handedly.
I would love to have
I know
you could moderate. I wouldn't care if any one of those atheists would actually want to have a dialogue. I would be happy to do so, and you can moderate it, and I'll be civil. I'll be nice. I'll be like the most.
Wait, no, I know. I saw your debate with Patient Beard, where I was like,
I love that. Hopeful. That was
great. Yeah, and but I some of the people that like argue with you, like passionately on this issue, I've had engagements with, and it goes just as badly. Like the guy Duke is the man.
Oh God,
that guy is a trip.
Oh God, is he not one of the dumbest atheists of all time?
He's
and by the way, I treated him very respectfully in that debate, much more than I do other people.
No, I was civil when you looked at the actual debate on Modern Day Debate, yeah. But on Twitter, Twitter's this dumpster fire, right? Yeah, of course,
he's an idiot.
And I went after him on Twitter too. He came on to he's engaged with me now like a couple of times where he and I have gotten into stuff over, like, because I hold the position of like, look, there's multiple ideas of ways of discussing this term and stuff like that, and he holds that the philosophical definition is wrong. Again,
I don't know what that means though.
So like, yeah, like
that's a value judgment.
Like, all right, there's several things we got to parse out in that statement. I don't know how to do either one, and but it winds up it turns into this monster thread because the vast majority of it is spent talking past each other, and
because he doesn't understand it, and he thinks he does, and that's what bothers me. It's like he didn't even know half these terms when we had our debate. He did no research on it. He did no prep work. I was explaining to him, and all of a sudden he comes back within a matter of like days or even hours, but so butthurt, and then trying to tell everybody that I'm wrong, that he knows it better, and blah blah. I'm like, dude, don't be playing this game. Look,
I think he was coming at me with like saying that the idea that I was saying that the colloquial definition is wrong, which isn't.
Nobody's ever argued
position.
that, though.
I don't think it's your position either. Like,
no, nobody's ever argued
that. You know, I don't know. It's an interesting
straw man's galore
kind of dynamic. Yeah, because like people will say that like Steve thinks that your definition is wrong and that you are an atheist. But I've never. You're just saying don't call me one, right? Like that's all you're fucking saying. Well, like you're just saying I don't use it to identify, self-identify.
No, because shit. I mean I could argue there's value to be had by different ways of describing things, right? And I think there's more utility.
Right, but you're saying don't use it to describe you.
Yeah, because I'm not an atheist, but I don't prescribe it to anybody else. I don't say, hey, look, you know, when T-Jump describes himself. I never know what the hell he is. He could be an atheist.
He confuses me.
He confuses everybody. So if somebody says, hey, look, I don't have a belief of God, and I don't believe that God exists, and I don't believe that God does exist, I don't know what their position is, except that I would call that agnostic because that's my position. He would be in the same boat as me. But they might decide to call that atheist. That's just a semantic thing at that point. That's what they're labeling themselves.
Like, as long as you just suss it out in a conversation, know what you mean and all that shit, then great, you know.
Cyrus and I have done that. Cyrus and I, he knows the distinctions. Yeah. He knows he's a philosophical atheist. He calls it agnostic. I've never argued with him at that point. He's done. It's great. Fine.
No, wait, I think you got that the reverse way. He's a philosophical agnostic, but he calls it atheist.
Didn't I say that? I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, okay. You said he's philosophical atheist, but he calls it agnostic.
Yeah, he's a philosophical agnostic. Yeah, he's a philosophical agnostic, calls himself atheist. But so is Nick Suter, right? So is polygenetically modified skeptic, I think. A lot of people are. As long as they understand it, I don't.
I was surprised at the number of people that are in the atheist community that actually don't hold the position that God doesn't exist.
Really?
I've been repeatedly surprised by that.
I am and I am. I'm not. There's a lot of them, and more so than I think there should be. But you're right. I guess it's odd when they're trying to promote atheism.
What's interesting to me is that the number of people that don't hold the position that God does not exist, but by the same token hold the people that do think that God exists are stupid. That's really common, and I don't know why it's that. I don't get that, because it's like if it's controversial to the extent that you're not willing to make a judgment on it, why is it idiotic for someone to hold a judgment?
Yeah. I'm on the same, and that's why you don't see me going after theists like that. Even I have never condemned you for being a polytheist ever.
No, I don't recall it ever happening.
Yeah, and that's because we understand the topics and we want to have discussions about them. But these other people, they just want to insult. Oh, you're a polytheist, you must be an idiot. Well, why is he an idiot? First of all, you haven't asked him his reasoning. Maybe he has some really fucking good reasoning.
Right.
You know? Because his reasoning is he's watched, you know, Thor, the Lost World too many times, but whatever it was.
Correct. I'm a really big Marvel fan.
Yeah. Loki is my dude, man. Loki is cool as shit. I don't know what it is. Loki is a brilliant actor. But Godless Scummer, Jeff says,
oh man,
Steve's favorite words. You were right, Steve. Yeah, those actually my 3 favorite words. The most hardest words in the English language to say is "you were right." Yeah. I love those 3 little words. Yeah. You know, you're right. You know, and it's so bad, Ocean. I know you got to go, but it's so bad. There's people. I can think of a half a dozen people probably that refuse to say I was right. So what they do is they say, "Well, Steve wasn't wrong." Not even kidding.
Really?
Yes. Yes. It's a running thing among my.
This is such a strange community.
My small circle of close, intimate friends. That Steve. Because I can't say Steve's right, but he's not wrong.
What? For me, I love these kind of conversations, and I try to engage with them as honestly as possible.
Oh yeah,
and
you are one of the things that I do I've ever known, by far.
Appreciate that. I one of the things that I try to do is like if somebody gets me into a position where it's like, yeah, I'm totally fucking wrong here, then it's like, okay, cool, I'll admit that, amend my position, and move on.
That's how you're supposed to do it. And but just tell it serious how you do it.
I haven't gotten flack for doing that ever, but there's so many people in the community that refuse to do that for whatever reason.
No, they double and triple down. They never backtrack.
Right.
That's what I was telling Cyrus. I was like, look.
Even though I've as somebody who's done it, I've modified my position in light of arguments quite a few times over my period of time here. All the time.
You say, okay, let me think about that. You're right. That's a good point. Let me try it this way.
Exactly. Yeah. But then at the end, I've never gotten flack for it, but people will be afraid of being wrong, and that hits their reputation in some way or whatever. When actually, I think it's worse for your reputation when you double down on something stupid, like especially in light of being shown that it's a ridiculous position or something. It would be like, you know. So I don't know. But it surprises me because I think that there's a lot of, I don't know. It is. There are a lot of ego trips in this world, in this community. So,
by the way, yes, yeah, it is a fact. Clash of the Titans 2, Ocean here was a documentary. Yes.
Clash of the Titans 2. This time it's personal, I believe.
Revenge. Revenge of the Kraken. I kick off, buddy. I gotta close it out too.
All right, I'm taking off.
All right,
it's good talking with you, man.
Always a pleasure, my friend. Peace. All right, guys. So, anyways, I'm gonna wrap this up. This was a lot longer than I had expected, mainly for the fact that I had people come in. But I'm hope you guys got something out of it. Again, at least at the beginning part on the whole babies are atheist thing. Stop using it, people. It's a bad argument. And if anybody says, "Hey, look, of course babies are atheists," you're just an idiot. You know what? You're not dealing with somebody who's really looked at the topics. And I implore people, I will tell you time and time again, start asking people for supporting evidence to support their beliefs. And again, you don't always have to have a citation if you're having some novel approach. I get that. But if you say something is normative in philosophy, you say, well, no. In philosophy, atheism is ubiquitously held as merely a lack of belief. Ask somebody for evidence for that. You'll never get any. All right. Yes, American Sister. I took a nap and Steve's still on. Yeah, I run late sometimes. But I like these little interpersonal hangouts. We used to have larger groups, but I got to tell you, I like the little more 3 and 4 man people. But let me know what you think. I can get 10 man. I got a 25 man Google Meets now, but that would be a bit wieldy, and I don't think that would probably work. But if you guys got questions on this stuff, let me know. At least you guys know I've been doing this for a very long time. I guess I'm OG now. And I want people to learn this stuff. It's not to face palm them. It's not to like belittle them as people think. People have a weird thing that I just go out trying to like belittle atheists. No, I literally want atheists to become better at argumentation. I like watching people like DD get the shit pushed in. I like watching pre-suppers, just get their ass handed to them. I like watching the Ken Hovens of the world get utterly destroyed. But when you're an atheist that is so bad at basic argumentation like T-jump, or you don't even have any decent arguments and trying to argue something as stupid as babies being atheist, and even Richard Dawkins, by the way, has come out and said that's a bad argument. He thinks it's indoctrination. I happen to agree with him. You're not going to get those things because we watched it happen. Godless Engineer lost a debate to Ken Hovind. He lost a debate to G-Man. I mean, come on, people. When you start losing debates to G-Man and Ken Hovind, you need to look at the atheist community and say, you know what, guys, we need to do something different here because this isn't working for us. And that's why you have better atheists out there with better arguments, because they've been listening to people like myself and some other people and owning that burden of proof and owning, some better arguments and owning why they believe there are no gods, not just sitting back and going, I merely lack a belief. Go watch these debates. And I got to tell you that the atheist that takes a positive approach is going to do much better. But it isn't low-hanging fruit. Matt Dillahunty goes after a low-hanging fruit theist and just sits back there and says, I don't have a burden of proof, and it's just lack of belief. Yeah, they're fun to watch, of course. But are they really that sophisticated? No. Go watch the Malpass debate, when he debates an actual atheist philosopher. A theist philosopher. Those are the kind of debates that really are educational. You learn something from those discussions. Go watch, like Malpass have a discussion with Dr. Luke Barnes on fine-tuning argument. I mean, way more complicated than you could possibly ever imagine. So these are things where if you want to learn the topics, you should be watching. Watching an atheist who just sits there and says, I have no burden, I have no claim, I'm not putting forth any position, I merely lack a belief that doesn't have a burden of proof. You're not dealing with somebody of any real caliber that has read anything. Now, again, I'm not either. I'm a low man on the totem pole in philosophy, but I got to tell you, I'm trying to climb up a little bit. I'm trying to learn it. And as I go, I want people to learn it as well. And I appreciate everybody that's helped me out in the last 7 years to learn these topics. Because without people like Ocean and Cirrus and other people in the community that like philosophy and want to have the same thing, where would we be? We'd be listening to discussions like we watched with Tom Jump and Darwin's Deity, which, by the way, I'm surprised did not literally destroy the fabric of the universe. It was like two completely immutable objects, so dense of stupidity, colliding with each other. That's just, I cannot even tell you how bad this discussion really was. But I'm going to leave it with that. AT2 Productions, Jared says, you're a glutton for punishment. Watch an interaction between Malpass and Darth Dawkins. I have that in queue. I have it pinned. I've watched the first 15 minutes, but Darth hadn't come in yet. It was funny you mentioned that because they were talking about Modus Toland's argument that Darth had against Agnosticism, and Ask Yourself was having some problems with it. And I was understanding what Malpass was saying, I think. And the argument that Darth was running was interesting, but there was a huge holes in it. Because he was confusing like epistemology with ontology. I think he was confusing the state of belief with the actual logic of the argument itself. And so I will finish the rest of that because I got to the part where they're like, oh, I think somebody said like, oh, Darth had popped in. So yeah, I will definitely watch that because I'm a huge Malpass fan. You guys know that. And any chance to listen to Malpass, you're going to learn something. Because I got to tell you, Alex is one of those guys that no matter what he argues, he could argue that the sky is purple polka dot rainbow color. He's going to win. I mean, so when he listens to these people, they're just so stupid. It's frustrating for him. I got to imagine. But Darwin's Deity and those guys in T-Jump, they don't want to learn from him. They want to try to best him, and it's not productive. All right, guys. With that, I'm going to bid you guys adieu. Maybe later I'm going to play Battlefield 1942 on Twitch because I got to get some hours on that and I got to get some concurrent viewers. So do me a favor. If you haven't subscribed to my Twitch yet, go subscribe to me on it. And when I'm on it, just put it on the background or something because I got to get like I think an average of 5 concurrent viewers over a period of like 30 days or something. And then the next level is like 75, which I'll probably never get. But we'll play some 1942 and some other games. And by the way, Vegan Atheist, nice for you to join us again. And make sure you come by for Rum and Coke night. Okay? Because she's our new nerdy girl. Yay. Good night.